Thanks for tuning in to another Tuesday Proline Picks report. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. We have a lot to go over here today on NFL trade deadline day. Wow, we had a lot of big trades that we're going to have to talk a lot about this week. As a Jet fan, I can tell you right now, I'm pretty pleased with what they were able to get back for unloading the talent that they traded away. I think they did the very smart thing. And now they just have to make sure they hit on these deals in the offseason. Sick and tired of enjoying the offseason as a football fan. I want to enjoy the regular season. So hopefully this administration will get it right. And I believe they do have the right people in place. I'm confident they will get it right. And the more draft picks you get, the better opportunity you have to hit the right quarterback, because that's what every football team strives for. And it's definitely the need, number one, for the New York Jets. And I believe will be in the 2027 draft. I do not think they're going to go crazy using one of their early picks on a quarterback. Maybe they'll use a day 2 pick on a quarterback, but I think they're going to go back at it again. With Justin Fields. Maybe they'll add another quarterback, maybe somebody in free agency. I mean, there's somebody I've already talked about that plays on the Philadelphia Eagles that I would love to get on the New York Jets. So maybe that's the route they'll take. And then that 2027 class definitely looks a lot better than the 2026 quarterback class that's coming up this April. Of course, the Dallas Cowboys made a lot of news, as did the Indianapolis Colts, in part because of those deals with the New York Jets. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk to RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys, with the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll hopefully line that up at some point whenever we can get him on. I'm sure he's going to be very busy. And then you also got to take a look. And it is a bye week, so I'm sure we'll be able to fit that in. Hopefully RJ is not on vacation or anything like that. And then same thing with Kent Sterling. I'd love to get a hold of Kent. We haven't talked to him since the season began covering the Colts. And this becomes a massive deal for the Colts. We talked earlier in the season with Kent about how it was important if Ballard was going to keep his job with the Colts, that it was important that he start to run his team differently than how he had been running it before. Because coming into the season, the Colts had a lot of issues on the football field during the regular season. He took over a mess. He did a really good job getting out of the mess. I'm talking contractually speaking, cap and all that stuff. But it's been his team for the past few years, and they haven't been able to get traction until this season. And a lot of people wondered whether or not he deserved a return. The death of the owner, of course, Jim Irsay, maybe that gave him a little bit of time. It's possible. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I think he was coming back anyway, at least for another year. But new eyes, new ownership, and so far so good. But again, what Ken and I talked about in the beginning of the season was you have to go into this season, if you're Ballard, and say, well, whatever I've done in the past, I'm trying to develop players. I do a really good job of drafting players, especially in day 3 and in free agency after the draft. It helps definitely with the salary cap when you can litter your team with a 6-7 round draft pick talent, as well as free agents. But the problem has been at the top. The problem has been he hasn't been able to land enough blue chip players, and obviously the quarterback too. Of course, he had a trade for this one, but hey, he did a great job getting Daniel Jones there. It seems like a really good fit. But still, you don't know long term. We'll find out. Look, we all thought Sam Darnold turned the corner last year, and in a way he did. But then the end of the season came, and everybody was like, well, he's got his limitations. But Sam Darnold is now doing the same thing in Seattle. Will we be able to change the narrative this playoff season? Daniel Jones definitely deserves the benefit of the doubt going into the postseason. If he can stay healthy, that's another thing. He has to stay healthy. But as far as the Colts, you got to credit Ballard for going out there and doing something that he is not used to doing, and that is making a big trade during the season. He doesn't make big free agency splashes, and he doesn't make big trades. This was the biggest trade, and he's definitely hoping it's the biggest trade that he ever made that will be a success for the Colts, not only this season, but for the next several seasons. So, again, hopefully we'll talk to Kent later on at some point. Of course, they're in Germany this week against Atlanta. So no bye like with the Cowboys. So probably a little bit harder, but I will try to get Ken on at some point. Okay, so we'll talk NFL a little bit later on. And then I just look, college football right now, the eyes of the fans are checking out ESPN and the college football playoff rankings being unveiled tonight, right now, actually. So hopefully I'll be able to check them out. I know I will be able to. I'm just going to locate it, surf, and show it to you as we check things out with our college football action in week number 11. We're going to go through that in just a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up with the NFL week 10. So speaking of college football playoff rankings, let's go ahead and pop up. Let's see. This is our NFL. Let's pop up, first of all, group of 5. So here's our group of 5 top 10. And I'll tell you right now, I came close to making this a top 5 because 10 is in trouble. Now, Tulane, you got to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt because, look, even though they lost, they still have just one loss in the American. And if they just end the season with one loss in the American, they'll more than likely be in the playoffs. I'm not going to say James Madison won't have something to say about that, but it's unless these teams just beat each other up, as I said last week, it's going to be hard for James Madison to receive that benefit of the doubt. But we'll see. First things first, Tulane's got to beat Memphis. I mean, James Madison needs to say Tulane to beat Memphis and so forth and so on. They need some upsets. They need Memphis, South Florida, Tulane to get upset, at least a couple of teams to get upset, and then maybe the right team to upset the other team in the championship game, and then maybe James Madison will be sitting there because they've been blowing out the last couple of teams they've been playing, so they're playing the best football of the year. And if they just keep – and I think this is important. Now, I don't know what the coach says during the week regarding the rankings or blowing teams out to look good, but I'm sure he's saying it to someone. And if not the players, his assistant coaches, the admin, hey, I know what we got to do to get to the playoffs. And I got to keep my foot on the gas with these kids. If we got a big lead at halftime, I got to keep them out there. I got to try to win these games as convincing as possible to give us a fair look. Okay. What a couple of losses did do to Tulane and Boise, it opened up the gate for San Diego State. That's right. Our little pet Aztec team from the Mountain West has made it up all the way to 4th on our rankings and our group of 5, deservedly so. They have a really good defense. I mean, this is the best defense that I've seen in the group of 5 in several seasons. I'd have to go back actually to take a look at it, but this defense is really staunch. I mean, they, let's just put it this way. The coaching staff, head coach, defensive coordinator, these guys are definitely being, they're making a name for themselves. We know Sean Lewis, of course, made a name for himself with Kent State, parlayed that to his job here. He gets off to a very slow start. Last year, things didn't go well, but all of a sudden, man, is this team firing on all cylinders defensively. Now, offensively, they still have issues, but at least they now have a quarterback that can just manage the team, and give him some athleticism. They have actually a number 2 quarterback that can come in and give him some of that dual threat, mostly running. They've got a nice running back in Sutton. And you just don't turn the ball over, manage the game, and our defense will win us football games. And that's what's been going on, especially with the teams that have been playing. Now, they're going to have to turn it up even more because they're taking on Hawaii this weekend. We're going to get to that game a little bit later on. And then next week, they take on Boise. Now, the good thing is it looks like Madsen, the quarterback for Boise, who went out early against Fresno, If you're wondering how in the world did Boise score 7 points at home against Fresno, well, that was why. They lost their quarterback. And unfortunately, look, this is the problem with Boise. This is why I never believed in them in the first place, because they're not as deep and they're not as strong as they were last year. Now, if they had Ashton Genty still on the team, all you have to do is hand the ball off to him. He could have ran for 300 yards last week, and they probably still win the football game. But you don't have Ashton Genty anymore, and now you got to step it up, and you have to play some of the better teams in the conference. And without a quarterback, even if you had Genty, then you're asking for trouble. So Boise, though, I got to keep them at 7 just because they lost one game. And again, this is the problem is, like I was saying, Navy lost, Tulane lost, Boise lost. So I've actually moved in Ohio and Miami. They're playing right now, actually, in Ohio. I actually liked Ohio in that game. They were a 2.5-point home favorite, but that game's like a flip of the coin. I just probably prefer them because they're at home. But both of those teams are clearly the class of the MAC. Once again, believe it or not, they lost a ton of talent from last year's championship game. And now these two teams are looking like they're on a collision course again. So the winner, especially if it's Miami, because Ohio already has a conference loss. So Miami will be in a lot better shape. They have the revenge factor. Of course, they got blown out in the championship game last year to Ohio. So we'll see. Okay. And then, so that's why the 6-10, I'm not really excited about right now. Even though, Tulane is still okay. North Texas, they also move up. They had a big win over Navy, dropping Navy's first game. So that's why North Texas moves up. Navy moves down just a tad because they still only have one loss on the season. But look, we talked about their schedule, and I doubt Navy will be in the top 10 by the end of the season. There's too tough a schedule. They're Notre Dame this week, and I know it's not a conference game, but still, it matters in the rankings. And if they get blown out, it's not a good look. So there you go. That's the group of 5. It's still going to be up to Memphis, South Florida, Tulane, and North Texas. That's pretty much where it looks like. Let me pop up the standings for the American. Maybe we could even take a quick look at the schedule for these teams so you can see what we mean here. All right, so you have Navy, Memphis, North Texas. Let me get some paper here and a pen. All right, so we have Navy, Memphis, North Texas, Tulane, South Florida, and even East Carolina. I don't want to get East Carolina lost in the shuffle here because East Carolina's got a really talented team, really like their coach, excellent hire. They got a quarterback, and that's a dangerous team. All right, so look, I don't think I know. Sorry, Navy fans, but I'm not gonna waste my time with Navy. Their just schedule is just too tough. So let's go Memphis, North Texas, Tulane, South Florida, and even East Carolina. So those are the teams that have the best chance. All right, so let's start with Memphis. And you see their schedule here. So they got Tulane this week, and then they are at East Carolina, and then they host Navy. All right. So that's a tough schedule there for Memphis. Next up, North Texas. They're going to end their season a lot easier. Okay. They're going to be at UAB, and that's going to be next week, at Rice, and then Temple. So North Texas, really easy schedule. Tulane loses the game to, remember, we talked about this last week. That's a team that I just didn't have a good feeling would run the table without a hiccup. And the hiccup came last week. And it's probably good for them. They got it out of the way. So, of course, they're at Memphis this week. We know how important that is for both teams. Then it's FAU, Temple, and Charlotte. Okay, Temple could have a lot to say here. If they can just pull off one upset, then it all depends, obviously, in which one of those teams they can pull off that upset against. And they're capable. All right. And then here's South Florida. They got UTSA. Then they're at Navy, at UAB, at Rice. So not a bad schedule. UTSA is no pushover, but they seem to be Jekyll and Hyde on the road, not good, home tough, and then Navy. Okay, so that's at least, and it's on the road, so that's one tough matchup. It looks like here for South Florida, and then we wrap it up with East Carolina, and they got Cakewalk Charlotte this week, but then they've got that big matchup at home against Memphis next week. That's going to be awesome. Now they've got to go to Texas San Antonio. So that's a lot different. All right. So as we break this down, Memphis has Tulane. I'm not going to go over the easy stuff. Memphis has a tough schedule. Okay. Memphis has to play Tulane at East Carolina and Navy. North Texas, they have the easy schedule. Okay. Their toughest game is going to be at home against Temple, or again, most likely. Tulane, they have one tough one this week, and then they do have to go to Temple. South Florida gets Texas San Antonio at home, and then their toughest one is at Navy. And then East Carolina, they get Memphis next week, and then at Texas San Antonio. Okay, so there's a lot to go over, remembering that the winner of this winner of the AAC more than likely is your playoff team. Okay, so bottom line is, as you see, all teams have one loss. Okay, so we're pretty much now, it's even. All right, doesn't matter that one team's 5-1, another team's 3-1. You're all going to play the same amount of games, so you're going to catch up. Okay. All right, so here you go. Memphis, we kind of feel that Memphis and South Florida are the top teams right now. All right, so let's say you are a South Florida fan, and you've already lost your game against Memphis. Now, what happens if you run the table, and it's very conceivable you will? Okay, you're going to, now again, I don't know, you're going to have the whole deal with more than likely the strength of schedule and similar games, all that stuff's going to matter. All right, which should, well, again, it will depend. Do they go that route, or do they go strength of schedule? They go strength of schedule. South Florida has a big advantage. All right. So for South Florida, since they lost to Memphis already, well, let's just keep this in mind. The loser of this Tulane-Memphis game is in big trouble. Okay, that doesn't mean they're out of it. It just means they're in big trouble because they will now be really behind the 8 ball. Okay, so they'll have that second loss. The winner is in good shape. And especially if it's Tulane. If Tulane wins this game and knocks Memphis out to 2 losses, that's really what South Florida is hoping for now. Okay, so last week it might have been different because Tulane still didn't have a loss. And they didn't want that situation where Tulane then would lose to Memphis, and then they both have one loss, and then that probably wouldn't work out well for South Florida because they don't play Tulane. And you might lose the tiebreaker there. But now that Tulane's lost, South Florida needs Tulane to win. All right. So Tulane knocks off Memphis. And look, it doesn't mean if that doesn't happen, South Florida's out of it. It just makes it easier for South Florida. So let's just say Tulane upsets Memphis. South Florida runs the table. Okay. Let's say they run the table. And let's say Tulane runs the table. Okay. Now, South Florida's already got a win over North Texas. So you would think that would matter and help them out. East Carolina, meanwhile, will be playing Memphis the next week. So let's say East Carolina. Now, I don't think East Carolina is going to run the table because with Memphis and at UTSA on their schedule, I don't know. I think that's asking a lot, even though I like East Carolina. They're a nice sleeper. Don't get me wrong. I think it's asking a lot. So if East Carolina does what you probably expect them to do, split. They have 2 losses. USF already beaten North Texas. Memphis has 2 losses. It's Tulane, South Florida, more than likely in the championship game. I just would have to, again, I don't know what the tiebreaker situation is with if you can in any way take advantage of the win over North Texas, because sometimes just because you have a win over North Texas, that won't eliminate them. But sometimes it will. Sometimes they might have the tiebreakers where if you have 3 teams and this would be, it's usually the smart way to do it. If you have only 3 teams in a tiebreaker, then, and if one team is beating the other, then that team should probably be out. Probably. Or at least you should say, well, the one team that beat that team, you can't knock them out, can you? I mean, so again, that's why I think they would have a little bit of an edge, because that would be the one that would scare me the most if I'm South Florida, is North Texas's schedule, even though they beat them on the road and blew them out. All right. So anyway, I'm not going to spend all day at this. That's just the bottom line with South Florida. If it's Memphis, well, look, they got a tough schedule. I have a hard time believing they're going to be able to run this table here of Tulane at East Carolina and Navy. I think there'll be a slip up there at some point. Yeah. And again, look, Temple, they get North Texas and Tulane. So if they can pull off one upset out of those two, that can make things interesting. And there you go. Again, my prediction, let's say, is it possible we still get a USF Memphis matchup? And that is definitely possible because, again, if South Florida runs the table, let's say Memphis beats Tulane. All right, now Tulane's got the 2 losses. Now they're on the outs. Same situation with North Texas. Nothing has changed. But East Carolina now plays Memphis next week. And now those teams go up against each other in that matchup. And so now you have something where, let's say Memphis does beat East Carolina and they run the table. Let's say Memphis runs the table. South Florida runs the table. North Texas has the easy schedule. They run the table. That means East Carolina loses. We expect, and of course, Tulane would lose. So now instead of having South Florida, North Texas, and Tulane, you'd have South Florida, North Texas, and Memphis. And again, it just gets back to the same thing. Now, look, Memphis will have beaten South Florida, and South Florida will have beaten North Texas. That is where you go into the whole situation of the other tiebreaker, whatever it is. So that's maybe something by next week. Hopefully, we'll have some more information on. I just wanted to spend a lot of time on that because that really is what is going to decide what's going on for the playoffs. And we'll find out also where these teams are ranked tonight because, will South Florida be ranked? Will Memphis be? Well, Memphis was ranked last week. So we'll find out. We'll find out if South Florida obviously would like to be ranked. That would make things easier. And because South Florida did have the wins over Boise and Florida, I'm just having a hard time believing if they win out at this point and other teams take care of business that they won't find themselves in the championship game. Okay. That's the group of 5. Tell you what, let's quickly move down since we're talking group of 5 to the Sun Belt. And again, here's James Madison. They do play Coastal in a few weeks. Coastal, I think, could lose this week. But the bottom line is James Madison, Coastal. We could get a winner in, loser out deal. And you got a big matchup this week. Southern Miss and Arkansas State, because Arkansas State pulled off the upset against Troy. So now all of a sudden we've got a nice little, let's see, does Troy? Let me see if Troy plays Southern Miss, because if Southern Miss knocks off Arkansas State, then Troy is right there, right behind Southern Miss. So let's see, do they play each other? Let's see. Yes, they do. Final game of the season. How about that? That's cool. So we could have Southern Miss Troy, final game of the season, old Coastal and James Madison, final game of the season, and whoever, it's like a little bit of a mini playoff to decide who goes to the championship game. And then there you go. But again, no other team has a realistic chance at all of going to the playoffs unless it's James Madison. And I think the only way they do get in, they're going to need to keep blowing everybody out. There are no close wins, no overtime win in the championship game, nothing like that. They got to win easy, and they have to hope that those teams. Now, what could help them out is that let's say that North Texas team with that weak schedule at the end of the season. Let's say somehow let's say South Florida, Memphis, Tulane lose another game, and then that winner though is in the championship game against North Texas. and let's say North Texas wins that game. What about North Texas, James Madison? Now I think we have a discussion. Now I think that would be a serious discussion that James Madison would deserve to be there. Okay. And that Louisville loss is looking better and better. They are a big Louisville fan. If Louisville can end up winning the ACC and James Madison, that even though the score got a little out of hand late, they were in that game for a good amount. It wasn't a big blowout or anything. So that could be a really good feather on their cap. Okay. The rest of the rest of the group of 5, Kennesaw continues to have a nice magical season. You see Jacksonville State there. A couple of one-loss here. Liberty is playing good football again. They have a nice matchup this week with Missouri State. What else? We got the MAC. I told you about the big matchup there from the top 2 teams. And then you have Buffalo is back into it. Buffalo needs to make sure whenever they play every week that they're the dog, because they can't winning, being the favorite, they're in trouble. Anyway, so Western Michigan, though, they still have a shot. So again, if it's Miami, if they beat Ohio, Ohio's out, they're done. And then you have it down to 3 teams with Western Michigan and Buffalo. With Miami, you would think Miami, if they win and knock Ohio out, Miami would definitely make it to the championship game. And between Buffalo and Western Michigan, let me see if who Western Michigan. Let's see if they have any of these teams on their schedule. They do. Next week, Western Michigan hosts Ohio. So I think Western Michigan at this point says, hey, we want Ohio to beat Miami this way because we've lost to Miami. And then we control our own destiny against Ohio. We can beat Ohio. And then they would want to be put in position there. And I would say if that scenario took place and Western Michigan then beats Ohio next week, you probably get a Western Michigan-Miami championship game. And then here you got San Diego State. Boise's the only other team within the vicinity, but without the quarterback Madsen now, Maddox for, who knows, a few weeks. Big trouble for Boise, especially if their quarterback is not in the matchup next week against San Diego State. So that opens up the door to every team here, because look at this. Even San Jose State, look at that. Because if you have just 2 losses and Boise loses again next week to San Diego State, any of these teams, any of them will have a shot. So all of these games matter. And that's great to see, because San Jose State, I still don't count them out. There was a lot of expectations on the season. It hasn't gone well, but they've been picking it up lately. And I've seen this story before in college football, so I'd watch out for them. The story of New Mexico is great. Hawaii, their chance is this week hosting San Diego State. We'll get into that later. And that's a wrap. Okay. Now, let's go to the playoff rankings. Now, I have no idea. We've been throwing these playoff rankings, our playoff rankings at you for the past, 6 weeks or so. And our playoff rankings really didn't change at all since last week. As you can see, the top 9 teams stayed the same because none of them lost. So they're all the same. And Texas moves in. And BYU moves in. I got to get BYU in there. They're undefeated, and it might be their last chance to get in. So I figure let's throw them in. BYU, Texas Tech. Whoever loses that game will be out of the 12. Whoever wins the game will stay in for sure. So big game. And you know what? You might see those 2 teams in the championship game again. It could get a rematch. And there you go. So not a whole lot to talk about there. Now, let's break down the games. Okay, where are we? Good timing. Okay, starting in the SEC. Georgia, Mississippi State. Now, there were some good games, I think, here from the dog side of things. A couple of good ones, I believe, starting off with Mississippi State. The line moved up a little bit now to 8.5. It started at 7. But I really like the way this Mississippi State team has played this season. I mean, they are a very confident team right now. They had that huge comeback win against Arkansas. I don't care who it is. This is a team, got to remember, this is a team that lost several games to teams that are considered playoff teams. I mean, championship contenders. I mean, look at this. The last two games, they trailed Arkansas last week, 35-21 in the fourth quarter, came back and won. They led Texas 38-21 in the fourth quarter 2 weeks ago and lost that game in overtime. And if you want to go to the last three, they've covered all three, including a 2-point loss at Florida, in which they were in field goal range and had an interception that ended the drive and their game. And that was it for that was it actually for was that the game that after that they fired Napier, I believe. Anyway, so Mississippi State now has 5 wins. So they need one more win for bowl eligibility, year 2 with Jeff Lebby. And they have no gimmies. Okay, they're at Missouri hosting Ole Miss. Remember, we talked about this last week, that Mississippi State needed to take care of Arkansas and they get one upset. So they took care of Arkansas. Now they got to get one upset in these next 3 games. And the way the college football season has gone, I think it's proven to us that we have no idea. Like, if anybody said Mississippi State would beat any of these 3 teams, nobody would, upset. But hey, I mean, what was it last year? What was the spread? 34 points. Georgia was a 34-point home favorite last year to Mississippi State. And you know what? They won by 10. And this is a much better Mississippi State team. Georgia, meanwhile, gets the big win over Florida. It had to score late. And if you look at it, see, they had 5 minutes to go. They were losing the game. They scored on that last drive, and they win the game. Now, in Georgia's 3 games away from home this year, overtime win earlier in the season against Tennessee. Tennessee hits the field goal. The kicker doesn't choke. The whole team choked on that last drive. They were up and down the field against Georgia's defense pretty much the whole day. And then just when they needed to have to finish the next drive off in order to win the game, what did they do? Well, Heupel decides to get conservative. And instead of just letting his team just keep doing what they've been doing all day, he starts getting conservative. And once your coach starts getting conservative, all of a sudden your players start to tense up. And you don't want to make a mistake. And then all of a sudden, that's the way the whole team felt. And then, so bad job by Heupel. Georgia benefits and wins the game. Also, on the road, just a couple of weeks ago, they go to Auburn. It is a 3-point game. And then they had, the controversial touchdown by Stockton. He didn't need to score. He takes a knee. The game's over anyway. And but really what happened was Georgia covered the spread. Last week against Florida, the exact opposite happened, where Stockton stopped short of scoring the touchdown, and Georgia does not cover the game against Florida. But bottom line is in the 3 games away from home for Georgia, they had the overtime win where they got lucky against Tennessee. It was a 3-point game against Auburn late, and it was a 4-point game late against Florida, where they needed a touchdown in the last 5 minutes to take. So bottom line, this is not why. Look, the line's 8.5, was 34 last year. It's not just because Mississippi State's playing well. It's because this is not the same Georgia team. So Georgia's not respected as this, it's Georgia, we're going to come in and smack you around. That's not the team anymore. So I think, considering this is a home game, that this is good, and their confidence is really high, because remember, Mississippi State has had some, besides those 2 games I just mentioned recently, don't forget, and then even the Florida game, don't forget they had, Tennessee game was close, had some really close games that they really should have won, and they finally were able to get it over the hump last week. I think they're going bowling. Now, I don't know if they're going to win 7 games before the postseason, but I think they're going bowling. And I can see them winning any of these games myself. It could end up being the rivalry game, the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss, because that game's at home. And that could be, of course, for Ole Miss's opportunity to go to a playoff. So a lot of different scenarios here. Bottom line is, I think Mississippi State's a really good play on the line. So I'm going to take the 9, and they are definitely a upset possibility. Okay. Next up. Let's see. Texas A&M, I believe. Is that the next one? Okay. So, and I'll get to some of the questions I see there, because I did talk about the moves in the NFL a little bit, but I'll try to answer those questions when we talk about the NFL in a while. All right. So Texas A&M, Missouri, and I think this is a same thing. I think this is a really good play on the dog at home. Missouri is getting 7, up from 6. Even though we obviously like Texas A&M, we have them as the number 1 team in the country. I am going to be interested to see what the playoff rankings say, because I don't think Texas A&M will be number 1, probably be number 3. But anyway, Texas A&M, a couple of things that do not look good on their side trend-wise, and for whatever reason, they have not been a good team lately with rest. They have dropped 5 straight covers, including their lone rest situation this year. So 0-5. And they're 1-7 to spread off a double-digit road win when they covered the spread. So there's a couple of things that just not really working for them. But on the flip side, what is working for Missouri, if you look at it, Missouri home dog just once this year, Alabama. And we all saw that game, came down right to the wire, close game. The better team, Alabama, just barely won. And that was it. They were 3-point home dog. Alabama won by 3. Missouri is 11-1-1 against the spread as a home dog with revenge. Okay, and I don't think that's a crazy trend. Bottom line is, hey, they're a home dog, and they that's the team they want to get revenge on from last year's loss, whatever. They come to play. Now, they were in this situation with Alabama, and that was a push. So that's why they're 11-1-1. But here's an interesting one. We just told you how Texas A&M is not really good coming off buys. Well, Missouri has dropped 7 straight covers as a conference dog when they take on an opponent coming off a bye. I'm not too worried about that. I think, of course, the biggest worry is that a freshman will be starting his first game in Matt Zollers for Missouri. There's a lot of talk about Drinkwitz. That does concern me because, once again, I don't know if it was a coincidence. It probably was. We saw what happened a few weeks ago. There were some rumors out there, the Penn State job, and those Old Dominion gets blown out. And I forget the other team that got blown out that had ties, or there was some rumors with the job. I don't think that's going to matter much. But Matt Zollers, who probably would leave with Drinkwitz. Matter of fact, I did the interview with Brian Matthews earlier today. Great sports writer, but covered Auburn for 25 years. You could check out the interview that is on the channel right now. It's already in the library. And we went over some of the candidates for the Auburn job, and Drinkwitz is definitely one of them. And if Drinkwitz were to come to Auburn, you can bet you that Matt Zollers would follow. I'm sure that would be part of the deal. Texas A&M, their schedule, they'll be taking on South Carolina next, FCS after that. So they should, because the South Carolina game's at home, so they should be in good shape until the Texas game at the end of the season. And, of course, that's a huge one. But I don't know. This is the same. I feel the same way about this one as I do about Mississippi State. I like the points. As you know, I felt Missouri has been a good sleeper all season, even though Pabula is a big part of that. He's down. Zollers showed enough in a very limited time that he is a talented quarterback, and he's going to be asking an awful lot from him. I understand that. But I think they're a dangerous dog. You get 7, you get about 225 on the money line as well. So that's the way I'm going to go with Missouri against Texas A&M. Speaking of Auburn, there you are. Now, this is a game I'm probably going to end up staying away from. It may not be the worst idea in the world either. Once again, you go with an SEC dog here in Auburn, get 7, you get 2-1 on the money line. Keep in mind that DJ Durkin, speaking with Brian Matthews, DJ Durkin, the defensive coordinator for Auburn, look, he's not the problem. Auburn's defense has been fantastic. They're one of the best, maybe even the best defense in all college football. That's how strong they are. So he's a candidate for the job. So he's going to pull out all the stops to try to get this Auburn team to maybe win this one because they're going to need 2 wins. And with an FCS game, we know that. Actually, I don't know. Let's just get the FCS game out of the way. The fact of the matter is, if they win this game and they can beat Alabama, whether they go to a bowl or not, the fact is you win those 2 games, you're in a bowl. I think it's going to be hard not to give the job to DJ Durkin because you know how big that rivalry is with Alabama. And if you're able to beat Alabama, beat and upset Vanderbilt, you go to a bowl, it's hard because he's a candidate and he's showing you what he can do. And look, the big deal though would have to be, can you bring in someone to run the offense? Because we know you can coach the defense, but can you bring someone in to coach the offense? Because the offense at Auburn has been dreadful in the last several seasons, which is the big surprise with Hugh Freeze. And I thought he deserved to lose his job. I've been backing him all year because of the fact that this, and it was warranted based on the Arkansas win. And the schedule said, just take care of Kentucky. And even if you lose to Vandy, you still have a shot. You can pull off the upset against Alabama and you keep your job. Everybody's happy. But that was just such an awful performance last week by the offense. They've been struggling all season, and he deserved to go because you can't lose to Kentucky. I mean, if you can lose to Kentucky, you lose the game some other way, but you cannot lose the game scoring 3 points against Kentucky and their defense. Anyway, Auburn 2-0-1 against the spread as a road dog this year. So this has actually been, they're actually 3-0-1 on the road as far as the season. So whether dog or favorite. So the road has been more kinder to Auburn as far as that's concerned because they didn't cover any of their games at home this season. The road team is 2-0 straight up and against the spread in this series the last 2 years. So that would favor Auburn, obviously. And this one really scares me if you're a Vanderbilt fan thinking about taking them. They've lost 9 straight games before a bye. I don't know what that's about. And 0-1 this year. And they've only lost twice. So this bye thing has really been a big now they're also coming off the loss to Texas. And I don't know where they're ranked, but that's going to be a big deal. If they're still ranked in the playoff rankings pretty strongly, then they've got a lot to play for. There still may be some players that just feel really down. They have no chance for the SEC championship, but they've got to get some positive momentum going in this game, mentally speaking. And one good bright spot is it's homecoming. So that's good. I think more than likely, and again, this is why I don't think I'm going to touch this game because if Durkin could get this team rolling, then I think Auburn becomes a very interesting team with that Alabama matchup coming. But I could also see some dysfunction there with Durkin or just nothing really changes. It's like, yeah, Durkin's on defense, but what does that do with the offense? They are going to be having a new play caller on offense, and maybe that's all they need. I don't know. But I just think this is a tricky game with Vandy coming up the loss. Now, the good thing is they were able to score 21 points in the fourth quarter, and if they get the onside kick, well, who knows what happens now in the game against Texas. So they have that positive momentum as far as the loss last week. Maybe that'll help them out as well. Okay. Moving along. Okay. Now we've got a favorite that we're going to take in the SEC, and that's Alabama. So jumping all over Alabama once again at home. This is the team. This is the direction to go with Alabama this season. They are 4-0 against the spread at home. They are 24-7-1 as a home favorite since 2020. They beat LSU the last 2 years, by an 82-41 margin. And they were only 2 3-point favorites in those matchups. So we all know that LSU, not the same team. I give Auburn a much better shot with DJ Durkin than I do at LSU with the interim coach, Frank Wilson. Frank Wilson, even though he has head coaching experience, he coached UTSA and he coached an FCS team. And he was a failure at both spots. Matter of fact, UTSA, things were not going very well. And then they let him go. And all of a sudden, they made this great hire. And UTSA has all of a sudden been an actual, really, good football team. They've been one of the better Group of 5 teams under Jeff Traylor since the hire. And Frank Wilson was the one that was part of the mess prior. He's got a 26-40 record. So it helps that he has head coaching experience, no question. Interim coaches, those guys usually don't get the job anyway. Plus LSU has covered 6 straight on the road off of a bye for what that's worth. But I just think Frank Wilson is way overmatched here. There's nothing for LSU to play for except the rivalry pride. And I think the only way they have a chance really is if they just play loose. They got nothing to lose. Maybe that's what they need to play better. I don't know. But that offensive line has been a big issue for them all year. I don't think that's going to change because of a coaching change. So I like Alabama for sure as a favorite. I have no problem giving 10. And then the last game in the SEC, is this the last game? Yeah. Florida is a 3-point favorite on the road. I'm not sure why. Kentucky, I think, Florida, look, especially DJ Lagway. I mean, seriously, you could say what you want about the call and whether or not the receiver did have possession. And do I think it was a bad call? Yes, I do. But they went with what was on the field, nonsense. Looked, it was a catch. Looked like it was a catch, but whatever. You know what? I thought probably was justice was, hey, you know what? If you can't hit the dude that is completely wide open and you have to make him make a spectacular catch to come back from the ball, because matter of fact, if that ball would have been placed where it's supposed to, that might have been a touchdown. Definitely a first down inside the 10-yard line. That would have been a touchdown more than likely. And now who knows what happens in the game. Wide open the guy is. So, but check out these trends definitely work against Florida, which is why I like Kentucky. Part of the reason I like Kentucky. Well, one of them is again, Napier's out. So an interim coach comes in. He's got no experience. And you're off the bye, and you have that big, hey, let's get something positive going here. Georgia, big rivalry. Everything is in the game, and you're playing well, and you got the lead late, and then you lose the game again, and here we are again. Nothing has changed. It's sort of like Arkansas with Petrino. Nothing changed. That doesn't mean nothing ever changes. Sometimes it does when the interim coach comes in. But nothing changed for Florida in the Georgia games. The same old Florida. And so I don't see anything. Look, how they try to get up for that game. Let's change our season. Let's make it worthwhile. Got this big upset possibility here. Let's go for it. This is our rival. And they lost. And that drive and that the focus of the Georgia game, that was everything for them for this season. And they lost it. And I just don't see how they're going to be focused enough to care at all about going to Kentucky at night on Saturday night. Florida is 0-2 against the spread as a favorite this year. I got one win. That was the Mississippi State game. And even worse, they're 0-6 against the spread as a road favorite when they take on a team that has revenge on their minds. And that's because Florida beat Kentucky last year. But check this out. And I believe it was also a game in which Florida covered. It was surprising, actually, that Florida won easy. And why? Why was it surprising that Florida beat Kentucky easy? Because that's not the way this rivalry has gone, but the series has gone in the last 8. Kentucky has won 4 out of 8 straight up and covered 7 of 8. That was the first Florida cover in 8 tries. So Kentucky has really been the better in the series lately. Throw in a couple of those trends I mentioned, and the fact that I just don't see how Florida is going to get up for this game. Meanwhile, Kentucky does have something to play for. Stoops is trying to save his job. And I tell you right now, if he gets to a bowl, he's not going anywhere. This is Kentucky. This is a basketball school. He's done a great job there. It's just been the last couple of years. Things haven't gone well, but all of a sudden, it looks like you found yourself a nice little quarterback. And if you can get this team to a bowl, then I think everything stays the same. They're going to be at Vandy and at Louisville, though. So they still have some work to do to become bowl eligible. Let us talk about the Big Ten next. And we're going to start with a Friday night game. Northwestern and USC. And this is definitely an upset possibility. USC, though, probably a little bit. The matchup may not work well, though, for Northwestern. Probably too many talented players at USC. You got to go to the West Coast and all that. But I do like the fact that you're getting 15. Don't forget, Northwestern was on a nice little run in their last 5 games this season. 4-1 straight up, 3-1-1 against the spread, and 5-0 in the stats game. In other words, they have out-yardaged all 5 of their opponents in the last 5. So the only big loss was the Nebraska loss, and they had the game right there, and they couldn't finish the job. So they have been playing great football, and I don't know how many times I got to keep bringing it up. The fact that Northwestern, their coach does a great job in these situations, pulling off upsets. He's done that for the last several years. Kind of pick things up where Pat Fitzgerald left off. Boy, that's a name that I just got to wonder is what's he doing? How is he not a coach again in college football? So anyway, Maeva too. This does worry me. In the last couple of games, quarterback for USC has only completed 47% of his passes for a total of 463 yards. So what is that? 231 a game. Not good for USC and Lincoln Riley football, with a 2 to 3 touchdown to interception ratio. So Maeva's lost it a little bit. And he wasn't really, nobody really thought that he was going to be some sort of a Heisman guy when the season began, but he got off to a really good start. A lot of it had to do with the opponents and so forth. And he's got really good talent around him. But now that we're getting to starting to play some better teams late in the season, film, all that, it's catching up to him. And I think Northwestern's defense definitely capable of keeping him in that little slump. But if USC can, if USC wins this game, it doesn't cover, or let's just say it's a tough game, the entire game, but USC wins it the way Nebraska beat them. I think they're in trouble because the next 2 games, Iowa and Oregon, no. You gotta get going quick again. You got to say, hey, we got away with it last week because Rayola got hurt, whatever the case. Now let's take advantage of that. Let's take care of Northwestern, run away here in this matchup, beat them by 25 or something, and then let's go get the rest of the schedule and get back into this thing. But hey, you know what? You're looking for a really good dog out there. I think this is a decent one to consider. Northwestern is 4-1, as you can see there on the money line. Penn State sure gave it their all. They were right there at the half, and then the talent just took over for Ohio State. But one of the things I mentioned, if Penn State was going to pull off the upset last week, is they had to make Julian Sayin work for it. They had to beat him up a little bit. They had to, get him dirty. The kid's been sacked 3 times this year, I think. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't want to hear anything about how great Julian Sayin is until he starts getting knocked around. Okay, once he gets knocked around, if he comes back from that and he makes some plays, then we'll start talking about how good he is. But he hasn't gotten knocked around yet, and that's you can't beat Ohio State if you're a big dog unless you're in a position and you make it one of those games. Well, they couldn't, and eventually Ohio State prevailed and blew them out in the second half. Indiana, now it's going to be at Penn State. But look, this is going to get ugly real fast at home. Indiana has to know this. They've got to get off to a quick start. If they can get off to a quick start in this game, they can put the crowd out of it, and they can cruise to victory here. And I could see that happening a lot quicker than last week, but they have to get off to that quick start because the fans will get into it. The players will get into it. If it's the same thing like last week, where you go into the half and you got a game, because then all of a sudden Indiana starts feeling a little bit of pressure, all that kind of stuff, because it's the road game. And I see it when you're at home, you can get out of that a lot easier when your crowd's behind you, especially. But Penn State's crowd ain't going to be behind them. So they must get off to a really good start. And another thing with Mendoza, and look, he might wind up being the quarterback for the New York Jets next year. So I'm definitely rooting for him. I want as many college quarterbacks that have draft eligibility this year to look good, so the Jets have an opportunity to grab one of these guys if they so choose. So I'm rooting for Mendoza, but I'm not just like saying I'm not jumping into this Mendoza stuff like he's the second coming, because he's not. He hasn't shown it yet. This same thing, they played a couple of tough teams. He's shown character. He's a good player. He's got talent, and he's got the potential to be a good pro. But I haven't yet seen anything in his game, especially lately, that sticks out in some sort of a wow factor. Matter of fact, if you look at it, his completion percentage has been down over his last 5. He's only throwing the ball for 229 yards a game, and he's got an 11-4 ratio in his last 5. That's nothing special. So if Penn State could take advantage of that in this matchup, because we saw what happened in Iowa, but Iowa sort of like Penn State, and that's the problem, is the best Penn State can probably do is what Iowa did. That's probably the best possible thing Penn State can do. But the only way you're going to win this game or even make it close, you're going to have to do something with the turnovers, which is another thing Penn State hasn't been good at. I think Indiana's to play. It's only 14. I'm a little bit surprised by that number. Penn State 1-11 against the spread as dogs of 15 or less. 1-11, and they're 0-1 this year. So I'll take Indiana in the 14. They got Ohio State and Purdue. Anything on that game? Let's see. Ohio State 3-0 straight up ATS since 2019 versus Purdue by 28 or more, including 86-7 margin the last 2 years. Maryland and Rutgers, and this line keeps bouncing back and forth. I mean, every time I look at this line, the other team's got the favorite. So this is probably going to be that way for a few days. It's way too early in the week. I don't think it matters. I don't see anything major. I shouldn't say that. There are a couple of things, but that either of them actually don't work for Rutgers, to tell you the truth. So Maryland's lost 4 straight. They're more than likely not going to go either team. I mean, what this game is basically is whoever loses this game is done. They're not going to a bowl. It's over. Whoever wins the game has a good shot, because not a good shot, but a shot, because Maryland still has Michigan State on their schedule, but they also have Illinois and Michigan, which is why they can't lose this game, because they're not winning 2 out of the last 3. Rutgers would have to win this game, and then they would have to beat Penn State at home at the end of the season, something that would never even be considered in normal situations. But now anything's possible with Penn State. So, yeah, this is it. Whoever wins still has a shot for a bowl. Whoever loses is pretty much done. I wouldn't touch that game with a 10-foot pole. Oregon and Iowa. And here is going to be to me, I got like a gut feeling that this might end up being a really big game for me. I really like Iowa in this game. These you got to remember about Oregon is that they're very talented. There's a lot of talent there. There is first-round talent there: quarterback, tight end, receiver. maybe even running back, skill positions, offensive line, defense. I mean, there's a ton of talent. But as we've been saying for most of the season, you got to remember that in some of the key roles, especially on offense, these kids are very young. You got redshirt sophomores. You have true freshmen. I mean, these guys, except for the tight end Sadiq, they're quarterback, running back, and top running back, top wide receiver, and top quarterback are all basically either sophomores or freshmen. And that is very young. And so that's why I think you've seen them have these big wins and then they've struggled. I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to struggle as poorly as against Indiana. So what that tells me is basically when it's all said and done, this is not a championship team. They're just too young at key spots on offense. They're not going to be able to run a tape. They're not going to be able to win 4 games in the playoffs. They're just not, or even 3. They're just not. So unless they get lucky breaks with their teams they're playing. Okay, I just don't see that happening. And that's why I really think this is a tough matchup for them. Now, they do also have to play USC and Washington on the road. So I believe Oregon's going to lose at least one more time. And if they lose this one, they might be done for the playoffs. And I think Iowa's going to give them a game. It's a 6-point spread. It's not a lot. Iowa's 2-1 on the money line, as we can see there. Don't forget, Indiana came into Iowa, and it was a 4-quarter last-second game. So that was a game. They were 9-point home dog, lost by 5, should have been 7. We all know the story. Since the loss to Indiana, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 in the stats, 2-1 against the spread. So they're still playing their best football of the year right now. They are 21-3 straight up in the month of November since 2019. So this team knows how to win at this time of year. They know how to win these games at home. They're 5-1-1 against the spread on the season. And I'm taking the 6, 7 at this point. And I think they are worth a little bit on the money line. We're going to go to a favorite here. We're going to take Washington. And Washington is only an 11-point favorite. Now, you definitely want to check the injury report for Wisconsin. They did have a bye week, so that helped them off to get healthy a little bit. Not that it really matters, but it does because, they were just playing with nobody against who they play, the Oregon. And Oregon obviously went into that game just thinking they were playing a high school team because talent-wise, it wasn't anything. I mean, especially on offense. I mean, that was probably the worst offense they played. Who knows? I mean, maybe in years, the program. And it was just one of those games where you knew if Oregon needed to win by 40, they could have. But it was also one of the situations where I said just a minute or two ago, which is why I don't trust Oregon. Because if you can't blow out Wisconsin with all the injuries they had going into the fact that they stunk anyway, that's a problem to me. But maybe this is the reason why the line's only 11. But that is a line that you should take advantage of. I'm not worried about travel now for Washington because they're coming off a bye. It's the first time pretty much all season that you don't have to worry about Washington going on the road and going back and forth. I mean, no, they had a bye. They had time off. So that's not going to come into play. Let's see. Wisconsin, okay? They played 6 games versus Power 4 teams this year. They are 0-6 straight up, 0-6 in the stats, 2-4 against the spread by a 182-41 margin. That is 30.3 to 6.8 average. And I only have to give 11 on the road to jump all over Washington there. I'll tell you right now, if Washington doesn't cover this, I don't want to hear about Washington because no question, they do have to start showing that they could be better on the road. No doubt. But Maryland, if you want to point to Maryland, keep in mind, Maryland went to Wisconsin and won easy. So just don't look at that as, Washington, they can't even beat Maryland. hey, they beat Maryland, and it was a tough game, but that Maryland team handled Wisconsin at Wisconsin rather easily. But I do agree, Washington's got to play better on the road, and this has to be it. You don't beat Wisconsin easily in this one. You've got some problems now. I mean, Jed Fish is a good coach, and they're very good at home, but you've got to start blowing teams out that you need to blow teams out, or else that's going to come back to bite you at some point. All right, and then here you got Nebraska, not just this year, but in the future. Nebraska and UCLA, this is a 1-point spread now for UCLA. Of course, Raiola's out, which is terrible for Nebraska. What a turn of events. I mean, Nebraska's up 2 scores early. It looks like they're going to go up 3 scores. Then they had a turnover, I believe. It was right after they had I think it was a turnover, I believe, or lost it down, and Nebraska had the ball like at the 30 of USC, and they were up 2 scores. It looked over. And then all of a sudden, not much longer after that, Raiola gets hurt, and USC comes back, and Nebraska is going to now start the kid who came in for Raiola, the true freshman, TJ Lateef. Now, this kid's only a 3-star kid, all right? So this ain't no 5-star Raiola kind of recruit. Big downgrade, no question. But UCLA, I get the feeling that, they had their moment, and then they were lucky to beat Maryland. They did not look good in that game. They barely got by, and then the very next week they got blown out. I mean, this is this is one of those things that we talk about it a lot. You got to notice these teams that while things are going well, when it looks like they're starting to slip, it looks like they're just now all of a sudden they peaked, and then they're slowly getting to a point where they're vulnerable. And then the 1 week that they just get by, usually you want to take advantage of them the next week in a reasonable game, but they were already a big dog against Indiana. You couldn't take advantage of it there. I think this is a good spot to take advantage of it, even though now we're a couple of weeks later and off a bye. Fact is, UCLA, the perspective of UCLA going bowling, not good. They're going to be playing Washington, USC, and Ohio State. Okay. They are not going bowling. Not going to happen. Nobody reasonable there can think that that's even going to happen. A few things to keep in mind. UCLA is just 1-2 straight up, 0-3 against the spread as a favorite this year. And they're 1-8 against the spread as a home favorite in their last 9, 0-2 this year. They had a 7-point road dog win last year against Nebraska. I'm sure Nebraska is going to want to return the favor. Nebraska is not really playing for anything. We get that. Raiola going down. You do have to wonder. Now they're on the West Coast, and there's a lot of things to worry about there. And look, they're only 2-5-1 against the spread. They're not a good team to take. And this is not one of my favorite plays, but I do feel Nebraska will find a way to win this one. I think with the whole, again, no, maybe UCLA needed the time off and they're going to go back to where they were pre-Maryland and pick things up when they were real hot there for a few weeks. Okay, maybe it'll happen. Could happen. I don't know. I just kind of feel that this is a good spot for Nebraska because all of a sudden they're a 1-point dog at UCLA. I know Raiola is a big deal. I get that, but this is just a better team. And I know they got the big quarterback at UCLA in this one, but I think Matt Rule needs to prove just how good a coach he is. And I think he is capable of proving that in this matchup. So I think Nebraska is not a bad idea here as a dog. Okay. ACC. And when we're done, before we go to the group of 5 games, I'll take a look at this standings. Now, SMU. Big upset against Miami. I don't know what to tell you. You're talking to a Jet fan that remembers the playoff game against the Cleveland Browns when one of our legendary players had a roughing the passer penalty that kept the drive alive when the Jets had a big lead against Cleveland in the fourth quarter. And if he is not called for the roughing the passer penalty there, the Jets are going to win and they're going to go to the AFC Championship game against John Elway and the Broncos. But he did. And it kept the drive alive, and Denver scored, and then they scored again and went to overtime, and they lost. Well, we pretty much know what happened to Miami last week. The game was over. And you get the penalty, keeps the drive alive, ties the game, go to overtime, lose. That's tough for Miami fans, really is. I don't know what to say. Beck, all of a sudden, his game really went sour fast. That kid really needs to, when he goes to the NFL, he needs to go to the right place. He has to go somewhere where he's got a really good coach that can toughen him up because he's got talent. He's got to go to the right place. And as per usual with a lot of these rookies. But with SMU now, what does this say about the Mustangs? Well, I don't look at it any different because really they should have lost the game. I mean, Miami was the better team for most of the game. Miami just screwed it up. They just typical Miami, the way they've been playing the last few years in these big spots. But SMU they are not last year's team. We've said it before. So I'm not looking at this as, this is the beginning of SMU, make it a run. No, it's not. SMU has been outgained by Wake Forest and Syracuse. Okay. And when they were outgained by Syracuse, it was without Angeli. It was with their crappy backup quarterbacks. And they only outgained Stanford by 16 at home. Okay. They are 4-8 against the spread as a road favorite since 2023. 0-2 this year. Remember, we had Wake Forest a couple of weeks ago, but this is big now because now we're getting 10 and almost an over 3-1 on the money line. But Boston College is not Wake Forest. Wake Forest actually having a good season. Boston College is having a nightmare season under Bill O'Brien. But they have been playing better lately. The last couple of games, they're playing better. And this is against Louisville and Notre Dame. They've actually been competing with these teams. So, again, Bill O'Brien's still a good coach. They have just really lost their way this year. Look, they've got one win, as I said. Nothing they could do in the next few games to save their season. But I do think that Bill O'Brien has at least one game in him this year. One game in him to say, I'm still Bill O'Brien. We still have something going on here. We'll get him next year. And I think this could be it after SMU came off that win last week. So, look, if I thought SMU was last year's team, that would be a lot different, but they're not. I think they're vulnerable, and I'll go ahead and take Boston College. Maybe even think this could be a good money line play, double-digit money line play. Duke and UConn, and Duke is up to 9 now. They've beaten UConn the last 2 years, so they've got this little series going on. A good spot for Duke. They're 4-0 against the spread as a road favorite under Manny Diaz. 2-0 last year, 2-0 this year. They have Virginia coming up next. That's a big matchup. They've covered 6 straight on the road off of a win when they take on a non-conference opponent. So 6 straight on the road when they take on an FBS. When they are coming off, basically it's a lined win, which is an FBS win. So as long as you're not coming off an FCS win, 6 straight on the road, following a win when they're taking on a non-conference opponent. Again, 6 straight. UConn's schedule this year has been pathetic. They have really not beaten anybody, and they've lost to Delaware, Syracuse, and Rice. Okay, so this is, even though they've got 6 wins, they're going bowling, very nice for Jim Mora. This is a major step up in competition for them. Definitely by far the toughest team they've played all season. It's only the second time they've been the dog roll this year. Just shows you. They did, I think it was, a push in the Syracuse loss. They lost that game in overtime. That was a bad push. They let that game get away, actually. That was a really good, that should have been a good win for them. They've actually had 3 overtime losses this year, which is really rough. 2 losses in overtime as an 8 and 10-point favorite. So the good thing is they're 7-0-1 against the spread in their last 8 when they're at home, and they are in a revenge situation. This is their season. This is their opportunity to play a good team at home They're already bowl eligible, nothing to lose, all that. So that could be dangerous. I get that, but I'm going to go with Manny Diaz here and the Blue Devils. I actually think Miami is going to murderize Syracuse. If they don't, shame on them, because Syracuse is just bad. Their quarterback situation, they went with this new quarterback just to show you how bad the Collins kid was, who replaced what's his name? Angeli. So Joseph Filardi, the true freshman, in his first start, he went 4 of 18 for 39 yards, and he was not replaced. Now, that was good for us last week because we loved North Carolina in that matchup. And you're going to put true freshman quarterback Joseph Filardi in the game against Bill Belichick coach defense that's starting to play really good. You were asking for it. Miami, meanwhile, is in a revenge situation, plus they're trying to get the stink off of what happened last week. Look, the season's not over for them. There's still an opportunity to find a way to, they need a lot of luck, with the teams beating each other up and all that, but they still have something to play for. You can't throw the season away. But Syracuse actually kept them from the ACC title game last year. If they would have beaten Syracuse, they would have went to the title game. They could have won that, went to the playoffs and so forth. So that's why this is a revenge game, and they should really stomp on them. And here's North Carolina again. And I don't have any idea why this line's dropped. I just think people still have this thing against Belichick. Like I don't think they care. I just think that all they know is North Carolina's not a good team, and Belichick is having a bad year, and there's no other explanation than that for me to this, because North Carolina has proven over the last several games. I said it last week, say it again. They're playing their best football of the year. They had the bye situation. They had a couple of byes, actually. If you look at it, they had their second bye, which was October 11th. So early in the season, you're coaching these kids for the first time. All this practice time in these byes is very important. So you come off the bye October 11th. Since then, the second one, they are 1-2 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. 2 of those were winning teams. Don't forget the Virginia game, overtime. Went for 2. Could have beaten Virginia. And their 2 losses were by 4 points. 2 losses, 4 points during that stretch. And their yardage during those 3 games since the second bye, they are out yardaging their opponents by a 355 to 233 margin a game. Throw in the fact that Stanford is 6-20 against the spread as a road dog, and 0-5 in that role this year. Remember, this is they're not used to having to come from the West Coast to go play in the East Coast, even though they've had this. I'm pretty sure all of the games that they played were all on the coast. So they've had all of these coast games, and this has just not been good trips for them. They've been a very good home team this year. Believe it or not, they lost their first spread last week against Pitt by like a point. This is not a good role for them this year. They're 0-4 straight up and against the spread on the road versus Power 4 teams this year by 151-40. That is a 37-10 margin. That's a 27-point difference. And I'm only having to give 7. Now, as we said last week, if North Carolina could beat Syracuse and then beat Stanford, all of a sudden you have 4 wins. You need 2 for bowl eligibility. That would be Wake Forest, Duke, and NC State. If you can then pull off 1 upset in the next couple of weeks, you can set it up all for all the marbles for the NC State rivalry game, and anything can happen in the rivalry game. I'm not sure North Carolina is getting to a bowl, but I do know they're going to win this game, and I do know they're going to cover this game. And keep an eye on freshman running back Damon June, because he's been a big part of getting this offense going. Lopez has had his problems, the quarterback. But he's an experienced kid. So the longer the season goes, you would at least hope, the better he'll become acclimated with the new team and so forth. June last week, 101 rushing yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions, 81 yards and a touchdown. And this is a true freshman running back. So this is a good player to keep an eye on. And I suspect this is a game that I am going to really like a lot this week. North Carolina, 7-point home favorite. Belichick's defense has been playing fantastic. And Stanford, that team, that offense on the road, not very good. Virginia, Wake Forest. And in this one, Virginia. I found out why, because we were talking last week, I think on Friday's show, didn't understand. We were going over the standings, didn't understand why Virginia was undefeated in their conference. And I'll bring it up with Mark again, maybe when we do the show on Friday. It'll be on Thursday when I talk to him as well. But I found out that the reason why they were still undefeated in conference play was because the North Carolina State game, again, I mentioned it. I said, yeah, these conference games don't usually happen the second week of the season. It's not, it's not that it never happens. It's just a little unusual. Well, turns out that because the rotation had it where they weren't scheduled to play, they decided to play each other. The schools got together and said, well, let's play each other because we want to keep the rivalry going. Like North Carolina State, Virginia, okay. They want to keep the rivalry going, so we'll play. But because of the way that worked out, well, you can do that if you want, but it's not a conference game. You can't just come up with this game. It's not in the rotation. So 2 conference teams played each other, but it didn't count in the conference standings. So Virginia is still undefeated in the conference. How silly. That's the NCAA for you. All right. So Wake Forest, look, last week was really one of those weird weeks. I tell you what, there were some things that just weird things happening, and this was one of them. Wake just did not show up for the game last week. And now they're 1-13 against the spread with revenge in the second of back-to-back road games. That sounds really good, but keep this in mind. Last week, Wake Forest was on a 14-0-1 trend. I don't remember what the line was, the trend actually was, but they were 14-0-1 on a trend line going into the game last week, and they got blown out. So just be wary of that. You may want to keep an eye on it. But look, Virginia, every one of their games is obviously close. They probably shouldn't have covered last week against Cal, but the player scored, did not slide. And boy, that's been a big theme this year, hasn't it? And anyway, they did win again, and they sure know how to win close games. So it's probably why the line's only 6. But I think it's an advantage you should take up with Virginia. Sooner or later, they're going to have a really good game. I don't suspect Wake Forest can get blown out again. But remember, one of the things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was Wake Forest going to that kid Purdy, a quarterback. And the kid definitely has talent, a lot better talent than Ashford. Ashford can't. I mean, again, I give Ashford credit for making the big play at the end of the SMU game, but that was just one play. Overall, the kid does not. He kind of reminds me of Jackson Arnold. It's basically what he is, because he was a former Auburn quarterback. That's how bad Auburn's quarterback situation was. They had that guy. But Purdy is a good passer, and if I'm Wake Forest, I want to get this kid in there. Now, I know he has to be healthy, but I want to get him in there. So I would be definitely a lot more concerned if Purdy was a quarterback for Wake Forest. But I think a lot of people feel Virginia is going to lose. They're going to get theirs. They're surviving in all these close games, but they do still have to play at Duke next week. And they also have their rivals, Virginia Tech, a few weeks after that. So I think that, to me, those are more vulnerable games. I don't see them losing to Wake at this point in time. Now, look, I'm not going to jump all over this because Virginia's been a really crazy team this season with all their close games. But I think 6 points is not really a whole lot to worry about. All right. Now, this spread, have really gotten out of hand. As much as I like what Louisville's done, no question about it, they are now a dangerous ACC team. And they have a really tough couple of games coming up after this. They're going to be hosting Clemson, and they're at SMU. So, but right now, they're playing better than those two teams. I definitely would say, you know what? I think Louisville's better than those teams, and I would definitely wager that they'll find their way. They could find their way with this schedule to the championship game. But this is a lot of points. I don't know why it's 20. Cal, their young freshman quarterback, he's had some mostly good games. He's had some games that freshmen are going to have. But yeah, I don't know. They got a bye next week. They're at Stanford. I know that, usually there's a distraction there before the big rivalry game, but this one is, I think, way out of hand, especially since Louisville has not covered any of their home games as a favorite this year. They're 0-4 in that role. So I'm definitely taking Cal on the 20. You're getting 8-1 on the money line as well. I don't expect Cal to win, but 20 points, that's a lot. Now, this is a game that we thought could have been meaningful when the season began. Not so much. So Clemson has been a major disappointment. They're 1-4 straight up, 0-5 against the spread as a home favorite this year. Wow, that's bad. The road team has won the last 3 years in this series by 6 or more points. So that would bode well for Florida State. Florida State, they had the homecoming last week, and that probably was a big reason that saved them, because they, as we talked about with the loss to Stanford, they completely gave up the season that week. But they showed some, good mettle coming back last week and showing some pride. Homecoming definitely had to help, and they were able to win big. And so now you got to wonder, did they just get that out of their system? Or, has reality come back? Well, we're not really going anywhere. Or, hey, yeah, we're still, we got pride. We want to go to a bowl game, that sort of stuff. So I don't know what you're going to get. I really don't. Clemson, meanwhile, even though they lost last week to Duke, they probably should have won. They got hosed by that late call, but still, they gave up close to 50 points in the game. It's just amazing what Clemson has done this season. And there's no excuse regarding the portal and money in that respect, because Dabo doesn't use the portal very often. So very strange the kind of season they've had. This is just one of those games I think I don't know why you'd want to take this game either way. And that will wrap up the ACC. Now, let's wrap up the Power Four with the Big 12. And we start off with the disappointment called the disappointing team called the Houston Cougars. What a terrible loss last week. They had the huge upset at Arizona State. The big win for Willie Fritz with the Houston Cougars. And they follow that up with his worst loss. Terrible. But the season's not over. They can still get to the championship game. They are 7-2. So, it's one loss, to move on. And that's why I think they're a good play this week. I'm going to forgive them with the one loss because it was a huge win and these things are going to happen. But they're definitely a better team than Central Florida. And it also helps that, remember, these two teams used to play each other a lot in the old American. When they were in the American. And the road team is 7-0-1 against the spread in the last 8 in this rivalry since 2009. And of course, that favoring Houston. Throw in the fact that the Cougars have covered 7 straight games after they've allowed 35 or more points. They 1-0 in that role already this year. So I'm taking Houston against Central Florida. Now, here you got one of the best games of the week. The Big 12 matchup between BYU and Texas Tech. Big spread of 10. I kind of thought it would be more like 7 or 8. But that's okay. I mean, we had Texas Tech last week, and they did what I thought they would do. They were just they overmatched Kansas State. They're just more talented than Kansas State. And the longer the game went along, the more it was proven. Baron Morton was able to come back and survive the game, which is important. But this BYU team coming off a bye, so that's important. Texas Tech did not. They come off a bye, geared up, ready to go in this one. They are 2-0, straight up and against the spread as dogs on the season. And that roll has actually occurred in the last 2 games. So this is they're looking for a third straight upset win on the season. And the rest of their schedule, they get TCU at home, at Cincinnati after that, and then Central Florida. So they still have some tough games ahead. The program has not played at Lubbock since 1940. So this is one of those new Big 12 rivalries. And yeah, this is a tough one to call, but you do get the feeling that at some point BYU is going to lose. Everybody's got to lose, right? And this would be a good spot for him to lose because Texas Tech is, and who knows? I think justifiably so. I think these two teams probably end up in the championship game again. So we could very well see that happen. I think because BYU had the bye, that's the reason why I think this should be a 4-quarter game. I think they're able to re-energize, get some of the nicks cleared up, get everybody ready for this one. While Texas Tech went out and played, a tough road game, and that should do BYU well in this one. So I don't see BYU winning. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to take a 3-1 money line play on an undefeated team. But I still think BYU would be a good play. Take the 10. What I'd be afraid of is probably, Texas Tech, they might win the game, score late, cover, that kind of deal. That could happen. It's not my favorite game of the week, but it is a game that I think BYU will prove to everybody that they are for real. Now, the one thing, though, that you have to keep an eye on is freshman quarterback. He's had a really good season, as we know. He's had some games. I mean, the Arizona game was probably the best gut check game that the kid had all season. Didn't play well, still found a way to get the team in the end zone in the last drive of the game and then win the game in overtime. So, but this is a major step up to Texas Tech on the road. At least he's got the experience, not a night game. It'll be an early 12 o'clock game at Lubbock, but I'll take BYU in the points. West Virginia and Colorado. So West Virginia had the upset last week. They have now 3 wins on the season. They're not going to a bowl, though. They have too many tough games coming up. But they do have an opportunity to win a 4th game. And I suspect they'll do that because Colorado, they've just lost their way this year. The last couple of games have been embarrassing. And they're 0-3, straight up and against the spread as a road dog this year by a 124-48 margin. That's by 41-16. Now, look, West Virginia is not one of those better teams that Colorado's played, but that's a lot of wiggle room, okay? It's 25 points of wiggle room, and I only have to give 6 at home, and you got one team feeling awful, no confidence, another team feeling great. They just come off a big win, and keep this in mind, too. The last 2 games, they lost to TCU at home by 6. They were a 16-point home dog. And they only lost a yards in that game by 1 to a good TCU team. So it was no fluke. Then last week, they not only upset Houston, but they win the yards by 3. And they win that game by 10 as a 12-point road dog. So the one thing I'm worried about is the first favorite role at home this year. So they're not used to being the favorite. They were favorite one time. And that was the game that we jumped over. We liked that one, week 2, Ohio. That was a long time ago, but Ohio up because Ohio a really good home dog team, and they upset West Virginia in that one. Keep in mind they've gone to the kid Fox, the young quarterback, Scotty Fox, and he was okay. I mean, he didn't throw for 500 yards. It wasn't because of Fox that they won the game last week, but it's a new quarterback. Looks like they've got a nice quarterback to develop, which is huge for Rich Rod. And Rich Rod's a good coach. So I think West Virginia is in play here. This one might be a little tough, but I think TCU is a decent play here because Iowa State's just, things have just not gone well. Matt Campbell, I don't know if they got the money at this program to be competitive. And I think we'll find out in this offseason. I don't think Matt Campbell is going to stay at Iowa State if they don't have the money to bring in players at this. Look, he had a hard enough time recruiting, but at least he had his niche. Now, if you got to start, doing the spending game, if he can't buy players here, he has no shot. And he's too good of a coach. So this is to be an interesting offseason. You got all these big jobs popping up. Nobody's really talking about Matt Campbell, but Matt Campbell might want to make a change. Iowa State's dropped 4 straight up and against the spread. So it hasn't gone well for him. And remember, look, beginning of the season, we didn't really look at this Iowa State team as anything special. Yeah, they had an experienced quarterback, good, and that's important. But there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the Big 12. Problem was they lost 2 huge receivers, 2,000-yard receivers, and you just can't replace that. And they couldn't. And they haven't found a running back since Breece Hall. They had that running back factory going there with Montgomery and Hall, and I think there was another kid in there. And they just haven't found that. And that's what Matt Campbell needs. He needs a running back for his offense. They just don't have that special back, and that's hurt him as well. So yeah, they're just well coached. They just don't have a whole lot of talent, and now they're losing. They got no confidence. They'll go to a bowl. They still got Oklahoma State on their schedule. So, but they're not going to go to the Big 12 championship game. That's all over. So that's not going well for them. TCU though, still got a hope for a championship game. They only got 2 losses in the conference. Again, I mentioned they're at BYU. It'll be huge next week. They're 3-0 straight up and against the spread as a home favorite this year. They've also covered 8 straight off back-to-back straight up wins when they take on an opponent off back-to-back straight up losses. And maybe more important, in the series against Iowa State, the host is 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 meetings. So I'm taking TCU and I'm giving the 6. Another game I like a lot, and that's Arizona minus the 4 against Kansas. Kansas needs 1 win for bowl eligibility, and you know what? It's going to be tough. This is possibly their best chance, but they're at Iowa State next week. And the way things are going with Iowa State, that's a road game. Tough to beat Matt Campbell at Iowa State. And then they get Utah, all right? But at least they get him at home. Utah is a completely different team on the road than at home. But still, I don't know if Kansas is going to a bowl. I'm predicting they won't. Now, next week, a lot of things can change the next couple of weeks. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to tell you what I think is going to happen in the next 2 weeks with these games. We got a lot of stuff that can happen between now and then. But it would be the second straight year they would not go bowling. And look, Lance Leipold has done a great job there. He ain't going anywhere. But that's another situation. They got to start figuring out. They got to start, hey, can we bring players to Kansas? That could be a big, Leipold might be someone also that might get a job opportunity somewhere, and he might want to take it. The last 3 games for Kansas, 2 of them were 42-17 losses. And then last week, they beat the worst team in the conference, Oklahoma State, by 17 points. They did not cover. And they only led 10-7 at half and ended up outgaining Oklahoma State only by 26 yards on homecoming. That's embarrassing. So now they're going to Arizona. And Arizona is, right now, they're playing their best football. So I think they are gearing up. They also have a major opportunity here to go bowl eligible, just like Kansas, but at least they're playing better. And if you look at their last 3 compared to Kansas's last 3, overtime loss to BYU. They led the game by 10 and led the game with 19 seconds left when BYU's freshman quarterback scores, forces overtime, they lose. 3-point road loss at Houston. Houston wins on a game-winning field goal at the buzzer, or 2 seconds to go. And then he annihilated Colorado last week. So that's been their 3-game stretch versus Kansas's last 3-game stretch. Clearly, one team's playing better than the other. Also, Kansas is 0-2 straight up and against the spread as a road dog this year by an 84-48 margin, while Arizona is 2-0 straight up and against the spread as a home favorite this year by an 81-19 margin. So I say take Arizona and don't worry about giving 4. And that wraps up our action in the Power 4. So let's take a look at the standings. And then we'll go over the games in the group of 5 and we'll do the NFL. So here's the ACC. So again, you look at here, you've got all these teams. See, Miami is the only team with the 2 losses, and they're going to need a lot of help. Okay. But look, you have 5 teams with a loss, and these teams are playing each other. A lot of these teams are playing each other. So matter of fact, Miami still has, who does Miami have on their schedule? Who do they have? Who do they have that they can take care of themselves? Miami still plays Pitt. That's the only other team in here. Okay, Pitt. So last game of the season, they play Pitt. So they can take care of Pitt. And then they would need an SMU loss, at least one. Look, they're going to have to get into one of those tiebreakers that work out in their favor. I have no idea, but it's not looking good for Miami. But they still have a chance. It's not over. And but all of these teams, said it before with the other conference, any of these teams has a shot. All these teams are capable. Pittsburgh's playing their best football. We know how good Virginia and Georgia Tech have been this year. We know how strong Louisville's playing. I don't think SMU and Duke are going to be in it. SMU is just not as good. Like I said, Duke, the defense has really let them down. So I think it's going to be these 4 teams. 2 of these 4 teams will be in the championship game. And I would probably go with, I'm still going to stick with Georgia Tech. Virginia's in such a good spot though, without a loss. If all things were equal and I just said who I think the better teams are, I would say it's Georgia Tech and Louisville. I still think those are the 2 best teams right now in the ACC, and maybe we'll get a matchup there. It's still possible, but Virginia in a good spot. They just can't have an upset. Well, actually, they probably can't have 2. I think they're going to be favored in the other games. So, yeah, they're in pretty good shape, but not a lock. As they lose 1 game, then all of a sudden they're probably in the same tiebreaker, and they might need help just like the other teams. Okay, that's the ACC. And then there's your Big 12. So you've got the 2 lost teams that are still theoretically in it, like TCU, Arizona State, Utah, and Houston. But here you got Texas Tech and BYU. So now look, if BYU pulls off the upset, you would think they would be a stone cold lock for the Big 12 championship game. But if they lose the game like they're supposed to, then all of a sudden you're now in a situation where, okay, will 2 of these, of then, let's say Texas Tech beats BYU, will 2 of those 3 teams lose one more game? Because that would open it up for the 2 lost teams to get into it. So that's what everybody would be battling for. So, but hey, I think we've had a really good season in the Big 12, and we have some good teams in here that we've researched and look, the Cincinnati Utah game, you can't go into Utah and play like that. You can't miss field goals and turn over the ball in the red zone early in the game at Utah. You do that, it's an avalanche. It is a tough place to play. When you're not used to these teams that are not used to going to Utah and playing at night, especially, it is a different atmosphere that they have never played before. And but that's why Utah is just so different at home than they are on the road. They're vulnerable on the road, but you get them at home, especially at night, and they are a handful. But Cincinnati, we'll see how they respond after their first loss. And then you got the Big Ten. And here you go. It's going to be decided by 2 of these 6. I don't think Michigan, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan, what do they have, Northwestern coming up? I wouldn't be surprised if they lost that game. They got Northwestern, Maryland. I could see them losing one of those 2 games the way they've been playing. But if they don't, and they run the table against Ohio State, I don't know. You get the feeling this is probably the year. Even though it's at Michigan, they're too young. This is the youngest team in the Big Ten. They're just too young. So I don't think they're going to make it. And then you have Oregon. Like I said before, look, this is a losers out game, Oregon, Iowa. I don't know if I could trust USC. So it's looking like what we all kind of feel it will end up, because Indiana's schedule, they are not losing. So we know basically what it's come down to is we know Indiana's going to be in the championship game because of the schedule, and Ohio State, it just depends on what they do with Michigan, as usual. So if they beat Michigan, they're in the championship game. And then if they don't, then it becomes a tiebreaker possibility with these other teams. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Indiana's in the driver's seat because they're not losing. But it's probably going to be Indiana or Ohio State again in the championship game. And you know what? That would be the way it probably should be. Imagine that, 2 undefeated teams in the Big Ten championship game. Problem is the schedule. This has not been a really deep year for the Big Ten. And unless you're playing a lot of, like, for instance, Michigan next year, their schedule is murderous. They're playing like every top team in the Big Ten. So it's not like you have those schedules for some of these teams. Indiana, Ohio State, yeah, they played a couple of tough teams, but other than that, 80% of the games they played are like they're like 30-point favorites, 20-point favorites. It's not like the SEC. There's Notre Dame with their schedule. Look, I said it the other when they played USC. If you win that game, you're probably in the playoffs. They still have a couple of games. They're going to have to play their best football. It's not going to be easy. Then those actually just one more. Excuse me, and that is the game at Pitt. So they should take care of Navy, and then they're at Pitt. That'll be it. Syracuse, Stanford after that. So the Pitt game, that'll be a fun one to keep an eye on. And let's see. And then you've got, we're still there. And then you got the SEC. They got the 2 undefeated teams. And so pretty much here you go. Georgia, Texas will be playing. And Texas will be playing Texas A&M. I'm not buying into Texas is all of a sudden now like, oh, watch out now for Texas. No, Texas ain't there. I'm not worried about Texas if I'm one of these teams. Alabama, Texas A&M, they're better than Texas. I think even Ole Miss at this point is better than Texas. Okay, so and Georgia, but we'll see for real when they play. But I would probably go with Georgia. I think the game's in Georgia. So yeah. So look, there's still a lot to be played here. A lot can happen. But I mean, I just think that Texas, because their schedule is a little bit tight. Let me see here. Let me see how this looks. So Texas A&M, they are going to be playing. Actually, I don't need that. I've got it all here. So Texas A&M, I've already mentioned their schedule. So really, it all depends if they lose to Missouri. If they lose to Missouri, then they could be in danger of not even getting to the championship game because they have that game at the end of the season against Texas. But I suspect that Texas A&M will find a way. Even if they lose to Missouri, I still think they'll end up beating Texas and get there. Alabama, meanwhile, you look at their schedule, and of course they got the rival Auburn. And then next week they have Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is going to give them a better game than LSU will. So that could be a tough one. But Yeah, it's hard to believe Alabama will lose twice. So I think Alabama's in good shape. And then you take a look at Georgia. They've got Texas next week at home. They still have to go to Georgia Tech, though. And even though that's not going to count in the conference, that will count potentially in the playoffs because you don't want to have that'll be an extra loss. And that means you can't lose again, or you're going to end up more than likely not making the playoffs unless you win the SEC championship. But next week, that is a monster game for both Georgia and Texas. And Ole Miss, they have the week off. The last team to talk about here. And then we'll move on to the group of 5 games. And Ole Miss, their schedule, where the hell is it? They don't have much. No, that's easy. South Carolina. Oh, they're playing South Carolina this week. Okay. Did I skip over that? Was that game on there? I don't even remember talking about South Carolina and Ole Miss. Wait, what am I talking about? That was last week. I forgot to fill it in here. Yeah, I remember we talked about that. That was a game that Mark thought could have been an upset. I know when we talk again, I know Mark's going to be like done with South Carolina. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get these teams. You always get these teams, at least one team a year, where you're like, I think they're gonna. This is it. I'm gonna pull it off. All right. Well, they're gonna pull off an upset. I just know it. I have one of those teams. I usually have a few of those teams every year myself. Nope. I'm gonna get them at the right. No, that's okay. They're gonna get no. And it's just totally, and you always end up with one. It's not only the upsets; it's regular. You always end up with at least 1 or 2 teams every year that drive you crazy that you can't win. That's why if I ever put myself in a position by like the second game in a row that I lose with a specific team, I'm done. I have enough teams in college football to use that if early in the season I've lost 2 like I take them, they lose. I bet against them, they win. One of those things, I'm done. I'm not touching their games anymore. So they've got FCS, Florida, and the Egg Bowl. So I think Ole Miss is in good shape. They're just waiting for. Well, they've already got the Georgia loss, so they're rooting for Texas. So we'll see. But when it's all said and done, I still think it's probably going to be those 2 top teams, Texas A&M and Alabama, and that'll do it. Okay, now we're going to wrap up college football with the group of 5. All right, let's do that. And we'll start in the American. And South Florida, this is going to be on Thursday. And the Bulls are a big 13-point favorite. These 2 teams only played once, believe it or not. And that, well, yeah, I guess I was thinking of FAU, actually. They met in 2023. And in that game, it was Texas San Antonio blowing out South Florida by 28 points. Of course, it was at Texas San Antonio. That's what they do. But now USF can get their revenge in this one, and I believe they will. They are 3-0, straight up and against the spread at home this year in the FBS by a 136-46 margin. That includes a 34-7 whipping of Boise State. And you remember that one, week 1, because I do. They're also 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 when they come off a bye, including 1-0 in that role this year. Texas San Antonio, 2-7 against the spread as a road dog since 2022. They're 1-1 in that role this year. That's why I said before, UTSA is just not, it's been Jekyll and Hyde, home, road. And I expect that South Florida, after the loss against Memphis, they know what's ahead of them. They got to get that out of their way. They had a bye to refresh. And I think they're going to be just fine here. I think they're going to take care of Texas San Antonio by over 2 scores. And then they have their last big test next week at Navy. And then run the table, and you'll be in the championship game. So I predict. But we'll see if that actually comes true. And here's the big matchup, Memphis and Tulane. So as I said before, Tulane, really, this is South Florida, definitely rooting for Tulane in this one. That would be preferable. Tulane needs this win. Really, they both need it. Whoever loses is in big trouble. So the winner is in a much, much better position. Next week, Memphis is at East Carolina. Tulane does not have a tough schedule, as we mentioned before, but they're 0-4 against the spread as a road dog since the 2023 season, and they're 0-1 in that role this year. So this has not been a good spot for Tulane, but they're coming off a loss. Also, keep in mind, John Sumrall is a name that is being thrown around. Talked to Brian Matthews before for Auburn. I don't know if that'll be a distraction or not, but this is a major, major game on a Friday night. So keep that in mind. Friday night, it'll go off at 9:00. And I just think Memphis is the better team. That's just it. I'm not going to. We know Tulane's more than talented, but the big win Memphis had against South Florida, considering they were outplayed, and they were able to come back and pull it out, get the win. It was major for the program, and I think they're going to take care of Tulane. The question is, will they take care of 4? It's not a lot, so I'll take them. Here's that Temple team. Temple is going to be taking on Tulane and North Texas in their next 2 games. So again, can Temple come up and surprise one of these teams? They don't have to. I mean, Army's not involved in any of this. Army's a 6-point favorite at home, as you see there. And Army has won and covered both as a favorite this year. So they're comfortable in this role this year. They have also covered 10 straight versus winning teams who are coming off of a loss, like Temple. And they've covered 5 straight games after they've played Air Force. On the flip side, Temple is 1-9 against the spread as a road dog of 14 or less. They've dropped 10 straight covers versus a conference opponent off of a straight-up ATS win. And even worse, they are 4-23 straight up in the month of November since 2020. And that includes the blowout loss last week to East Carolina at home, which came from nowhere because they've had a good season. So what does that tell you? Does it tell you that they wear down? Yes, I think that definitely tells you that. Even though they're well coached now, it's only been one off season, and you have to build the team up. You've got to build depth. And Temple, this game will tell us a lot, because I don't think if Temple doesn't respond in this game, then I don't think they have a prayer in the next couple of weeks. Those teams will probably run all over them. But Temple's got to show that they have something left. I don't know if they have a bye. They could really use a bye, to tell you the truth. Unless you're a fan of one of those teams they're playing and you want no bye. They do have a bye after this game. Okay. So that could be a big help, that they get a bye to get recharged against Tulane and North Texas. But I don't think it's going to help them in this one. So I like Army. I love all those trends as well. Temple needs 1 win for bowl eligibility, and they haven't had a bowl since 2019. And I do think they got a better chance against Tulane or North Texas. Tulane is probably their best chance. What probably their best chance is if Tulane would lose to Memphis, then their season would be over basically. And then Temple would be ripe for the upset, that sort of thing. And then maybe even you start getting into John Sumrall rumors and stuff, because Auburn, if they really want Sumrall, would like nothing better than Tulane to end their season so they can start talking to him. Okay. But anyway, we're going to go all out on Army in this one. Rice and UAB, nothing really here. Nothing here. East Carolina should win easy. In this one, just want to mention that FAU has been a home favorite just once this year. They took care of the opponent, straight up ATS. They beat Tulsa last year 63-16. It was the last game of the season. So, Tulsa was just not going well. Fired. They're getting rid of their coach. Everybody gave up. One of those things. But now they got to, I think I like their coach. And I think their coach is going to do a good job, getting them going. It's going to be a process. But they had the really close loss to Temple a couple weeks ago. They went for 2 in overtime. Couldn't get it done. But it's homecoming for FAU, and I think FAU is the play here. Now, here's the Navy game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame has won these last 2 matchups the last 2 years by a 93-17 margin. So they have annihilated Navy, good Navy teams too. And they've just, you know what it is? It's just they just dominated the line of scrimmage. They don't do anything crazy. They don't try throwing the ball 50 times. They just run them down. They're just too big. And that's what they do. All right, so that's the AAC. Now, let's go to the Mountain West. And we start with the matchup. The first Mountain West matchup is at 6 Eastern on Saturday. San Jose State, the line is up to 4 now. And I think you might want to take San Jose State before the line maybe gets any further. I'm not sure it will, but because Air Force has an offense, we know that, even though they didn't show it last week. Air Force is 1-9 against the spread when they take on an opponent off of a straight-up ATS home win. And they're 0-1 in that role this year. San Jose State, as I said before, this was a team that a lot was expected when the season began. They get off to a slow start, but they had the big win against Hawaii last week. And now you look at their schedule, and they should be able to win 3 out of 4. The question will be, can they pull off the game at San Diego State? That's coming up in a few weeks. So they're not out of it. And they're still playing not only for that, but they're playing for a bowl. So I think San Jose State is definitely a good play here. The points, Air Force with the offense, it could keep them close. They've lost some close games this year. That'd be the only thing I'd worry about, but I'm okay with giving up 4. Now, we've mentioned several times this season about Nevada, about how a dangerous dog team they can be from time to time. And from time to time, I'll reference that in weeks in which I take Nevada, like this week. So they're getting almost 10, 270 on the money line. So let's go refamiliarize yourself, or if this is the first time you're with us, please subscribe, like, and share, all that cool stuff. You can also hit that $sign on the message board if you ever want to donate to the channel, anything at all, $1, $5, $50, whatever you want. Keeping in mind, anything you donate goes right to our business expenses to make sure that we're already starting to put together. We're probably even gonna come up with a goal to put together a certain amount of money because we want to hire a really good editor. And we want to use that money to bring in an editor to put some of these shows that we're doing together in a really cool professional way. So anyway, so Nevada has 9 losses under head coach Jeff Choate, who was here last year. 9 losses by 7 or less. And they are 12-1 against the spread as a conference road dog of 13 or less, 2-0 in that role this year. They've only lost 1 game in the yards battle by over 100 yards since the Penn State loss week 1. Now, you might say, well, what's so special about that? Meaning, even though they're 1-7, they're not, and I just mentioned about how many games they've lost, close games and such. Their defense isn't really bad. The defense keeps them in games. They'll give up 24-35, and it's just the offense that haven't been able to pick things up. But whenever their defense plays really good that week, and the offense plays a little bit better than normal, that's when you get those games that are close. And that's why, there are some ways that maybe they can come up with another 10th loss of 7 or less. That would cover this one. So that's why I'm taking Nevada. And I'm also, and the 3-1 ATS is a road dog this year. So look, I like Utah State. I think they're a decent mountain team coming off the loss to New Mexico a couple of weeks ago. They got a really tough schedule. This is a must win if they want to go bowling, because they've got some really tough games coming up. And I could see Bronco putting together a bowl season in year one. They got a good quarterback. They're a better team than Nevada. But Nevada, like, again, you see those trends. They just find ways to keep games close every once in a while, and I'm gonna take them this week. All right, in this one, well, we did hit last week with New Mexico against UNLV, and that came through. That was a real big high-scoring game, no surprise. This one's now down to 4. Colorado State off a bye. They're not really playing for anything. It's been a bad season for Mike Norvell. I think they're going to move on. I think they have to. This used to be boy, when Sonny Lubick was coaching his team, they had such a prideful program. It's a good place to play. This is, I mean, they should be expecting more. Let's just put it that way. There should be more expectations at Colorado State. They should be like where Boise State is. That's what this program used to be, and that's what they need to do again. And I think they need to find their next coach that can take them to that level. Anyway, I don't know what it's going to do for them this week. This game really doesn't mean a whole lot for Colorado State, but UNLV is still in the race. So I'll take UNLV, but not a game I'm going to even probably touch, to tell you the truth. San Diego State and Hawaii. And yes, this is, of course, a big game, as we mentioned before. Strangely, the line went from 4 to 7. And I don't know. I kind of felt that when the line came out, that it was going to be a little bit. 4 wasn't bad. I kind of thought 5.5, and so it's kind of been in the middle. But I just felt very strange. Went from 4 to 7. Because once it started at 4, I was like, okay, I can see it at 4. It's fine. And I mean, I've been like the biggest proponent for this team, but first of all, I haven't heard anything. It's too early in the week. I want to find out about the middle linebacker, Latuli. He is a big part of their defense, and he had what looked like a knee injury in the game last week. And I hope it's nothing long-term, even if he's out this week. I really, really hope he's okay, because I do not want to see a player like that, as important as he is for the defense, one of the best defenses in college football, go down. It would be really, really tough to swallow. Couple of things here. The Aztecs have covered 13 straight as a road favorite of more than 2 off of a double-digit spread win. And they're 2-0 in that role this year. Hawaii, though, is 19-5 against the spread in the last 24 as a home dog. 19-5. And they're 2-0 in that role this year. The home dog role matters more to me. And just generally anyway, I think this is a tricky spot for San Diego State. I really do. I've been all over them, as you know, for the past month or so. I think we've had them 4 or 5 straight games. Really love what's going on there with that defense. But, yeah, they're undefeated. They're the lone undefeated. I just get a feeling that they might be overdue for a loss. Last week, they didn't really play well. They got behind. It's funny. Wyoming had like a couple of plays, and then they had to get to midfield. I think they might have even had a kickoff that got them to close to midfield. Then they had one play, and then they had the backup quarterback that was a dual threat guy that just comes in to run, basically. And the safety just runs like a bullet into the backfield, completely flies by the quarterback, who kept it and had daylight. It was just really bad play by the San Diego State safety. There was no reason for him not to take the quarterback in that spot. And just like that, 7-0 Wyoming. But then San Diego State doesn't do anything the rest of the game, basically, because San Diego State's defense just is too awesome. But the offense just couldn't get on track. And they didn't even cover the game until like 3 minutes left when Sutton had a 50-yard touchdown run at the end of the game. So it was one of those games that really wasn't, they weren't at their best. So I do worry that maybe that's a sign, like I was saying before, that maybe they're going to get caught this week. And this is a tough situation for them. So San Diego State, though, has beaten Hawaii the last 5 years. They've covered 3 of them. And the last 4 in this series has been decided by 7 or less. And now that it's 7, makes me feel better about taking Hawaii. So that's what I'm leaning towards. But I will say this. When I take a team and they do really well for me, and I've got like 4 or 5 straight wins on them like I do with San Diego State. If I like the other team, I'm not taking the game. I'll just stay away. That's my taking the other team, is not taking the team that's made me all that money for a good 4 or 5 weeks. Or I might even just take the money line, because I could throw maybe a parlay into that. And if they wind up winning and upsetting San Diego State, then I got something to benefit from it. So next week, Boise State for San Diego State. Okay, let's get to the Sun Belt. All right, here we go. Thursday. This game really means nothing, but I'm going to take Georgia Southern and 2-1 on the money line. They've had some good losses to James Madison, Southern Miss, a very hot Arkansas State team. So really, in the Sun Belt play, they've had a very tough schedule, basically, is what it's been. And then he had a good win against Georgia State, but they're 0-4 as a road dog this year. And what that tells you is this was a team that was a lot more expected from them than there was. A lot of people thought, like me, that this was going to be maybe they were going to be the Old Dominion of the or the Coastal Carolina now of the division that was going to be there trying to knock off James Madison, but hasn't been a good season for him. But it also hasn't been a great season for App State. So 2-1 on the money line. I'll throw a few bucks on the Eagles there. And then you got James Madison, they're blowing everybody out now, and you don't want to face them. That's why the line's 13. Marshall pulled an Old Dominion last week with James Madison coming up. They did not show up last week, and that was not good. They lost to Coastal Carolina 44-27, and he actually played well early on, and then he just got annihilated late. So, yeah, I don't know. They just were not – that did not look like the Marshall team that we had seen a month prior. Now we'll see what happens, because what happened to Old Dominion was they also got blown out. Look, there's no way I'm taking Marshall, that's for sure, but I'm going to take James Madison. They're just playing too good right now. They're on fire, and I think they're definitely the way to go. Keep in mind, Marshall has outgained 4 of the 5 SBC opponents this year. So, yeah, they were playing well coming into last week's game. So was Old Dominion. It's been 11 days off for James Madison, too. Keep that in mind. So they've had a few extra days off because they played that game against Texas State on a Tuesday. Next up, App State. Then they play Washington State. Okay, that's a tricky game because I don't think they're going to get any credit for winning that game. And that's, as we see, Washington State's been capable of playing tough against good teams. So that's an interesting matchup. And then the Coastal Carolina game at the end of the season. But I'll take James Madison here. While they're rolling, I'll keep them. I think they're a decent play. Arkansas State's red hot. They had the surprising upset win over Troy. They had won 5 straight, as you know. That was my team. And they were just playing great and covering, and they were just flat last week. They had nothing last week. So credit Arkansas State. Now check this out. Since the first bye for both of these teams, and you have to, when you get to the middle of the season, to the end of the season like this,
you have to look at these bye situations. You have to look at where the teams were, because especially in college football, when they're coming at, I told you with North Carolina, these are crucial moments of the season where you find out how teams respond. Some teams just look like the same way they were before the bye. Other teams look completely different, and it's not a coincidence. So check this out. Both of these teams in their last 3 games since their first bye, Southern Miss, 3-0 straight up, 2-0-1 against the spread, and 3-0 in the stats. Overall, they've in their last 4 games, they've won 4 straight, 3-0-1 against the spread. Arkansas State, since the bye, 3-0 straight up and against the spread and in the stats. And they're 4-0 straight up and against the spread in their last 4 on the season, just like Southern Miss. So these two teams very similar in getting to this matchup right now. And when we showed you the standings, they're the 2 teams at the top. Our Troy is now having to wait to see what happens here. And just taking a look at their upcoming schedules, Southern Miss got a tougher schedule. Arkansas State's not the type of team that can say they got cakewalks. Trust me. They still have a couple of teams they can lose to. But Southern Miss has 2 tougher teams. They play Texas State and Troy at home. This is a 4-point spread. You know, Southern Miss has been the better team most of the season, but I really like the way Arkansas State's come on. Remember, we had them a couple of weeks ago. I forget what matchup it was. And so we we took them because we liked what we had seen and they were playing well. But last week it was just, they were running into our Troy. So of course I was going to take Troy, but then they just beat up on Troy. So yeah, I'm going right back to Arkansas State. Butch Jones seems to be putting something together here after a really slow start. So I wouldn't mess with the money line though. I'll take the 4.5 just in case. Now, this one's interesting because Coastal, as we've said for the last month or so, Tim Beck really thought after they got off to a slow start, he was done. Where they were, what they look like now, it's not good. And then all of a sudden, they start picking things up and winning. But they don't win very pretty. They are in FBS games. They have been out-yarded in 5 of 6. The only time that they had more yards was against one of the worst teams, Louisiana Monroe, because Louisiana Monroe all of a sudden has just not been a good team this year. Keep in mind, it's the first time Coastal's been a favorite all year. All right. And they're given 7. And even better, the road team in the series has covered 8 straight. And even better, Georgia State has won and covered the last 4 times they played at Coastal Carolina. And yes, I'm going to say it again. And even better, 3 of those 4 were as dogs. So I'm taking Georgia State. I'm taking the 240 on the money line. And I say that's enough for Coastal Carolina. Texas State really has, their season fell apart quickly. They are 0-4 straight up and against the spread in their last 4. 2 of those were overtime losses. One of those was a 1-point loss, and then they had to blow out to James Madison, which was their last matchup, which basically happened after the 3 close losses, and they pretty much then got walloped by the best team, probably with no confidence. Lafayette, though, a team that had higher aspirations when the season began, they lose the quarterback. They finally found a good replacement in Lunch Winfield, and they start playing better. Lafayette completely owns this series. They have won all 12 matchups with Texas State, covering 11 of 12. Last year, they were on the road at Texas State and a 4-point dog. So they had dominated the series. At that point, they were 11-0 and 10-1, and they were on the road, and they were a dog by 4 points. And Lafayette Oh, you're making us the dog? Really? Okay, well, we'll win that one too. So, and here we are. They're a dog again. So, yeah, I'm taking Louisiana to see if they can win their 13. How about that? You've lost all 12 of your meetings with this team. You just lost to them last year as a favorite, and you're back again as a favorite on the road. Wow, the nerve. Let's talk about the MAC. All right, where's the MAC? We got the MAC? No MAC. There we go. Okay. Oh, there's the score of the game. I don't even know what part of the game. Fourth quarter, 52 seconds left. Hey, we got Ohio in the game. All right. I didn't want to see that. Okay. Well, at least they're winning. All right. So let me see here. By the way, part of the reason I liked Ohio, they are 10-1 against. Hold this for future reference. They're 10-1 against the spread on weekday games, and they were 16-2 against the spread at home since 2022. 3-0 this year. Now, for all I know, Miami's got the ball at the 1 yard line, but that's the reason why I liked Ohio in that one. Miami came into the game winning 4 straight up against the spread and in the stats. Keep in mind, now that if Ohio does win this, that does make things even because Ohio's already got the conference loss. So Ohio definitely needed this one more. We'll see if they can hold on. Okay. This one, don't care about that. Hey, our boys at Kent, we're going to go back to Kent in this one. This is tomorrow night. So we're going to take Kent as a 1.5 point dog there. Eastern Michigan, 2.5 point favorite. Bowling Green, 0-3, straight up and against the spread in their last 3 since they had that big home upset win against Toledo. Eastern Michigan is 2-1, straight up, 3-0 against the spread at home this year against FBS competition. Bowling Green could still go to a bowl. They still have a shot at they can even go to the MAC championship game, but the quarterback situation for them has just been really bad. Even though Pine came back last week, but did not play well. So I'm not sure how healthy he was. I mean, they had 4 quarterbacks, so who knows? He might have had to go in there and play. So I can't touch Bowling Green right now. And Eastern Michigan's got some pretty good numbers to back up this role here. So not a game I'm putting a lot of money on, but if I was, I would take Eastern Michigan. And then we wrap it up in college with the Sun Belt, the dreaded Sun Belt. No, not the Sun Belt, the dreaded Conference USA. Excuse me, Sun Belt. Liberty playing really good right now. Actually, both teams are. Both teams, again, since the bye, the last 3 games, Missouri State, 3-0 straight up, 2-1 ATS and ITS. Liberty, 3-0 straight up, 2-1 ATS, ITS since the bye. Liberty's 7-point favorite now. And they're starting to look like the team that we thought they were going to be in the beginning of the season as the clear-cut favorite. But Missouri State, they've handled themselves well year 1 in the FBS. As far as the rest of these, no clear definitive team. Delaware's a very tough home team, so I'd be a little bit weary of them covering this at home. Probably, but I'm going to stay away from that one. Kennesaw, we know the story here. We've loved this team this season. What a great turnaround! First time these 2 teams have ever met. It's a pretty big number. Came back to cost us almost last week. We had to push at 13. Here, we're just riding them. Again, when you got a team and you're making money on them, you just keep riding them until you lose money. And that's what we're going to do. Also, New Mexico State 1-8 against the spread. When they take on an opponent with a win percentage of greater than 600 off of consecutive wins. And they're 1-0 in that role this year. So that means that they actually, wait a second, they 1-0 in that role or 0-1? Let me double check that. Just to make sure. I mean, either way, it's still a bad number. Because if they're 1-0, then that means they were I guess they could be 2-8. What is that? 600. They are 1-7. No, they're 1-8. Yeah, I wrote that wrong. They're 0-1. So they're 1-8, 0-1 this year in that trend. So that trend still holds that New Mexico State is not good in this situation. Basically, what it means is when they're playing a good team that's playing good football, they don't cover. And that's not a bad trend. It's not one of those really strange ones. And then the last game, I mean, who would have thought Oregon State would be giving 20 points up to anybody? But it's Sam Houston. And they've been a running joke with us all season. So they have been pathetic. They haven't won a game. And Oregon State, look, they got a nice running back. That kid Hankerson is a nice physical running back. He's going to be an NFL back. And I could see him rushing for over 250 yards in this game. Honestly, I don't think Oregon State's a bad play here. So, they had that win over Washington State. We lost that one last week. I was really pissed. Washington State, I mean, look, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, again, it was like there was just some games last week where you're watching your teams like Troy, Washington State, and Wake Forest, some of these teams that were playing really well coming into and they just flat, not doing anything. So it was really, really bad. But that's the thing. It's interesting because, again, I mentioned this before when I was talking to Jim and Mark, the experts, the handicapping experts, asking about things, when things aren't going well. Do you ever have that feeling? And they didn't have the same feelings I did. And the reason they don't have the same feelings I have is because I'm not a professional handicapper. They are. So me, when I do, it's not that I have a bias towards teams, like, at some point. It's just that, like I was saying, I like these teams, and if they make me money for 3 straight weeks, 4 straight weeks, I keep going. And if not, I'll stay away. But that's not what they'll do. If they go 3 straight weeks and make money on a team, they'll go against them in the 4th week and put a lot of money against the team because they just feel that that's the way to go. And that's why it catches up to me several times a year, because I don't do that. I like, if I like certain teams, I'll go into the beginning of the season. I go over all the research. I go over all the teams, what I think they're going to do, how they're going to play. And then when the season starts, then I start adjusting. And then usually within the first few weeks, I kind of feel what's going on. And then that's when I start getting attached to certain teams, pro or negative, and if they're doing well for me. So then all of a sudden, because there's so many teams in college football, I can have that attraction, pro or negative, to some teams, and I kind of stick with it the whole season. Now, in the long run, it works for me. But what will happen is once or twice a season, I just get completely beat up because I have this group of teams, these 20, 25 teams, generally speaking, that I go with. And if it goes away and they have a bad week, collectively, I get hammered. So if that makes any sense. So that's the reason why, again, that's why I'm not a professional handicapper, although I profess to be one. The reason I do this is to provide you with as much information as I can so you can make the decision on what you think you should do, and then go from there. And then, hey, you know what? If you do see a professional handicapper and they maybe share the same confidence in a game that I might have, then maybe that's good enough, and maybe that works. Sort of like with John Hardoon, we do our thoroughbred show every week. Sometimes we pick the same horses. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a benefit. I know it's a benefit, not even sometimes, a lot, to have that second handicapper there on the show. Okay, so which is why you want to tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern. That's when Jim Feist is going to be down in Las Vegas live. Tom DeMarco's. There's always going to be Jim and 2 additional handicappers. That makes 3. Then on the Playbook show at 1 o'clock on Thursday, it's 3 again. It's Jim, Mark, and Andy. So there's a nice multiple mix of handicappers each week here on Proline TV. And part of the Our Lads Football Network. Okay, that's it for college football. Let's wrap it up with the NFL. And let's also I'll tell you which are the best teams. Let's see. Do I have that here? Yes. The best teams we like in college. So just to wrap up, how many do we have? Just the favorites: Alabama, Indiana. Actually, am I going to make Indiana a top one? No, I'm not, because I don't trust Indiana to make them a top pick after the Iowa game. So I'll go Alabama, Washington, North Carolina, Arizona, South Florida, Army are my top plays for favorites. I also like Indiana, Virginia, West Virginia, BYU, San Jose State, and Louisiana. Even though Louisiana is a 2-point dog and BYU is a 10-point dog, but I don't have them at the money line. My favorite money line plays and dog plays are going to be Mississippi State, Missouri, Iowa, Nevada, Hawaii, Georgia State, and double-digit Northwestern, Boston College, and you know what? I'll probably even put a couple bucks on Cal, because I think that line is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so that's college. Now, NFL. Thursday, Raiders, Broncos, 9-point spread. Denver's on a roll. They've won 6 straight. And keep in mind, they're 0-1 in the division this year with the loss to the Chargers. And this is going to be a running theme. There's several of those spots this week, which is why there's some teams I really like. We're at that point now where we're going to start to get more into division matchups. These start to become very important right around the midway point. So I'm one second. So I'm saying to myself, 1 second. So I'm taking Denver in this one. Not a big play because it's a lot of points. And Denver has not been all that great, as we all know, in covering big spreads lately. So that does, and Vegas had a pretty good go at it in their matchup, loss to Jacksonville last week. But as typical, another loss for the Raiders. It's a rivalry game, though. But I know, of course, Denver will be up for it just as much as just as much as the Raiders. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys are still with me. We have some of those comments earlier, Smarty and DeMarque. And let's see, you had the NFL question. Smarty, you asked about the Jets. Right now, are they better or worse? So, and we'll get into the game. It's obvious to me that it'll be a problem defensively when you lose Gardner and Quinnen. But offensively, it should be better because you bring in a couple of receivers now. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have the most pitiful group of receivers anymore. You know, now you get Garrett back. Mechie will be in there, and Adonai Mitchell will be in there. And Mitchell, even though he's going to go from a playoff team to a losing team, he is now going to get prime opportunity to be a top receiver. This is going to be a big opportunity where Wilson and Mitchell could form a really good duo if Mitchell develops. Now, Mitchell still has a lot of the characteristics, the poor characteristics that he had coming out of college, but he's also just a very talented and big physical receiver that the Jets need. So, and remember, even though they gave up a ton of points, the Cincinnati, they still won the game, and they didn't need the defense. But that's Cincinnati. So in general, I don't really think it's going to hurt him that much. Now, I'm going to hold judgment defensively with Gardner because it's one of those things where, and again, the Bengal game was one thing, because keep in mind, they did not get torched in the passing game against the Bengals last week. They got torched on the ground because they specifically took out the receivers. With Gardner down, they made sure they doubled both Higgins and Chase, And that left the box open for the running game. And they said, okay, if you're going to run the ball, but we're not going to get beat with the receivers. They got beat one time early on Higgins, and then that was it. They shut down the receiving core the rest of the game. Chase didn't even have 100 yards receiving, even though he had 12 receptions. And Higgins basically had one catch on the game, which was a big touchdown. But that's a unique situation. I can't guess how they're going to be now, because when you've had Sauce there taking out one side of the field, sometimes you don't realize how much you miss a player like that until he's gone. But keep in mind, the Jet defense had not been playing well this year anyway. They started to play better before the injuries occurred again in the Cincinnati game. But in general, the one thing about Quinnen, I will throw in there, I don't think they're going to miss him tremendously, because he wasn't happy anymore. And when you have a player that's not happy, that's look. And I'll have more to talk about this in the upcoming shows this week, because I'm sure they're going to ask me in the other shows. Fact of the matter is, the Jets management, coaching staff knew firsthand, watching these kids this season, they had to get rid of them. Not because they're not talented, but because they were mentally destroyed by the former coaching staff. Those players are too good to be associated with a team this bad. They were getting used to losing, and they just didn't know how to win. They didn't have the mental capacity of winning in the NFL. And Sauce is now going to go to a team that, even though they don't have a whole history of winning, they have a confidence level this season of winning, and he's going to learn now for the first time as a professional how to do it. He's going to be there. He's going to, wow, I'm going to experience it, and that'll help him, and that'll help Quinnen as well at some point. No question. I'm sure he's going to be a great personality for the Dallas Cowboys. But the Jets did the right thing. They got rid of players that just had been damaged by the previous coaching staff, very talented players. And I felt that the coaching staff just said to themselves, I don't think we can get these guys out of this malaise. Now, maybe we can, but it's going to be it's going to take a while, and they're making a lot of money. And when they have a lot invested in those players, they expected a lot more out of them this year. And the problem with Sauce is his inability to create turnovers. And I said this about a month ago, I think, when I did that Jet video. Sauce Gardner, if he thinks he's going to the Hall of Fame with like 5 career interceptions, man, he's going to have to sweat that out. You got to learn how to turn the ball over. You've got to be able to be a difference maker that way. And that's been one of the problems. And I think that's one of the things that they feel, hey, if we're going to be that type of team that we need to be on defense, we need guys that can turn the ball over. That's our defense, and we're not getting it from Sauce. And also the other thing too is it's going to take, even if everything goes perfectly well for the Jets, in 3 or 4 years, they'll be a playoff team trying to be a contender for the Super Bowl. That means Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner will be entering their final big contracts. And those are always the real catchy ones, because those are the ones, sort of like what you're seeing with Hendrickson with the Bengals. You see it with some players all around the league. They get to that point when they're going to get that 29 years old, 30 years old, to get that last big chance for a big contract. And some teams decide, nah, let's pass it on. And some teams say, okay, we'll give it to you. Well, I'm just thinking that the Jets felt, you know what, this is going to take a little bit longer than we thought. We should be, look, remember, they had 6 losses by 1 score. So they probably felt that if we had a little bit more confidence in winning here, instead of always losing, we had a better group that understood what we needed to do here. And they needed to be healthier because they were also banged up, that we would maybe stick with these guys. but we're a little bit further along than they thought. And they invested a lot of money in those guys. And I think it made a lot of sense to trade them and get all these draft picks because they are loaded with draft capital. And I truly believe that they're probably going to spend the 2027 pick on a quarterback in the first round because there are some good first round quarterbacks coming out in 2027. And then they'll fix the rest of the team this upcoming offseason as well. Okay, so let's. And overall, DeMarque, regarding the other trades, again, the two big ones were the Jets deals. I mean, I like the Ravens move to get the kid from Tennessee, DaQuan Jones. I think he's going to help. Didn't they also get Phillips, I believe, from Miami, the pass rusher? So he's a good player, but he's also a banged up player. He never stays healthy. Some of the receivers, I think the move that Seattle made, that was a good move to get Rashid Shaheed, very fast player. You put him there with Horton, with Kupp, and with Jigba, and you've got yourself a heck of a receiving core, or at least a young, nice, besides Kupp, you got a nice, exciting receiving core with speed, and that'll be big help. So really, other than the big moves from the Jets, there were a lot of other little ones. I'm sure we'll talk more about that on the shows on the upcoming Thursday. Of course, more than likely, we'll talk more about that. But nothing else that was really earth-shattering. The Jets were the big ones. So in other words, I didn't see any where I said, "Wow, that's going to really make a difference for such and such team." I think the Eagles did a good job. Actually, was it the Eagles that got Phillips or the Ravens? Let me take a look at the let me see here. NFL trades. Let's see. Let's go here. Where are we? I got to get back here. All right, let's see. Winners, losers. Not any winners and losers. There's home. This was a good deal here for the Chargers. They did need to get some tackle help. But you see how hard it is to get all the trades that were made today. And this was like the only trade that was made for an offensive lineman. Teams do not trade offensive linemen. And Penning was actually just basically a bust in New Orleans. And the Chargers are like, well, we'll give you a 6th round pick. We're desperate. We got to get somebody in here. There's Shaheed. Let's see what else. View all. Maybe that'll give us some more look on the trades. Jacoby Myers to Jacksonville. That's a yawner. I don't think. Look, Joe Shoyinka is not going to make the Bears any better. I do also like the addition of Logan Wilson for the Cowboys. I think to get both Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson, that was really good. Logan Wilson will be a big help to the Cowboys. Where are the other trades? Here it is. Let's see, because I don't know where. Jets also got that defensive back from the Chargers. Let's see. There's Shaheed. Here it is. Okay. So, yeah, Dramont Jones was the one that went to Baltimore, and it was the Eagles. Yeah, it was Jalen Phillips to the Eagles. So, Eagles need extra pass rush help. And, look, Phillips has to stay healthy. That's been the thing that hasn't worked out for him. Jael Alexander, it's funny. Eagles, they're just like, let's just get rid of this guy. This guy obviously is not a good teammate. And now the Ravens want to bring him in. It shows you how desperate they are for some veteran defensive backs. Yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah, nothing really earth-shattering. Nothing happened on the trade deadline. The only move, the biggest move, the only move that happened in the trade deadline that will have a significant impact or could have a significant impact was the Colts getting Gardner. All right, Atlanta and Indianapolis. Now, this one is going to be in Germany. And the Colts, as you see here now, a 6-point favorite. Atlanta, look, they can get well pretty quickly because they are going to be playing Carolina, the Saints, and the Jets in the next 3 games. So, and they could lose this game, win those 3, and they're 6-6. So they still have a long way to go. But I tell you right now, Atlanta fans are not happy. They are not happy with the coaching staff. I do not expect Raheem Morris will be here next year if this team does not make the playoffs, even though Arthur Blank has been very patient, overly patient sometimes with his coaching staff. So that's something to keep an eye on. Falcons have covered both times they've been on the road as a dog this year, winning one of them. I tell you what, the Colts, getting Sauce Gardner is important because I'm not sure many teams have a tougher schedule in the second half of the season as the Colts do. Colts have a very tough schedule coming up. All right, so those are the games before things really get started early on Sunday. And we're going to start with the 1 o'clock games. And this is one of the better games. I think the better picks. I think the Bills, I had them, as you know, a couple weeks ago against Carolina as my top play. And I might go with the Bills again this week. The Dolphins are a complete mess, as we all know. That hasn't gotten any different. Now they've gotten rid of Jalen Phillips. And also, this is a couple other things. This is an important division game for the Bills. So this isn't one of those, it's the Dolphins, let's just sleepwalk. No. We're coming off the Chief game. Oh, we're so great. No. Winning the Chief game and continuing to win these games after that are very important, especially since if this was not a division game and they were a 10-point favorite against some other team, I might be a little bit more weary. But because it's a division game, they're going to be all out on this because they cannot afford to be in a position where it's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter against a team like the Dolphins when you are already behind the New England Patriots in your division. So big difference between winning the division and not, and having to play that extra game potentially, depending, of course, on how good you are by winning the division. Okay, the other thing on why I think this is a good play for the Bills, the Dolphins, besides them being a bad team, besides the fact they've gotten rid of their general manager, now they've traded Jalen Phillips, they're going to Spain next week. So I'm not sure how much focus is completely going to be here for the Miami Dolphins. I mean, if they're a winning team, that's different. But they're a losing team, and they got Spain coming up. All right, the Saints in Carolina, 5-point spread. I thought I still think Carolina might be a decent play, but here's the problem. This is a bad roll for them. Check out these bad trends. 2-8 against the spread, last 10 home favorite. 3-12 last 15. 0-13 against the spread. 0-13 versus a losing team with revenge off of a double-digit loss. And 1-17 against the spread in their last 18 as a favorite when they take on an NFC opponent with a win percentage of less than 400. So there are some really bad trends for Carolina here. Following a major win for them, the first win ever for Bryce Young against a winning team. So, yeah, you would think there might be a little bit of hangover, but they've got some tough games too coming up. They got another division game next week in Atlanta. They got San Francisco on Monday night. They got the Rams after that. So you cannot stumble on this one, which is why I'm going to still take Carolina and the 5. I like Buffalo a lot, and I feel a lot more comfortable taking Buffalo as a top pick over a bad team like Miami. But I like Tampa Bay just as much. The only problem is they're playing a team that has won 6 straight games. The Patriots are on fire. And that is something you don't like to walk into. But just like I was saying in college, I think the Patriots are in the same situation as far as winning teams. And it looks like that maybe they're about to lose. That's what we saw last week with Atlanta. They were very fortunate. Atlanta came back, should have tied the game, missed the extra point. Yeah, I think New England's on the verge. I think it's going to catch up to them. Now they're on the road. And by the way, also, now they're playing a really good team. Remember, most of the teams they've beaten, the Bills, they've had the one big win. Other than that, they haven't had any other big wins. They've just taken care of business against bad teams. That's what they're supposed to do. Give them credit. And they got more bad teams coming up. They got the Jets on Thursday night. They got the Bengals and the Giants. So, look, they're not winning this game. I would just pay attention to the injuries for the Bucs, but the Bucs are coming off a bye. So either way, they're going to be rested and ready to go at it. And they've got Buffalo and the Rams coming up back-to-back away after this. Bucs are going to want to take care of business at home. They will. This is disrespectful. I don't know why they're only a 2-point favorite at home. Patriots have had a nice season. 2 points. Come on. I know the Bucs are banged up, but they still have a lot of good players, including Baker Mayfield. This one, I'm a little bit surprised, but I shouldn't be that the Ravens are a 3.5-point favorite after the Vikings pulled off the big win with J.J. McCarthy, showing that he's actually not all that bad. Yeah, I think this is a little bit high for me. I thought the Ravens should have been 1.5, something like that. But the Vikings had a great defensive effort as well last week. And the Ravens, remember, it was the Miami Dolphins. Okay. So let's see how it goes this week against Minnesota. Because their schedule, as we mentioned last week, is really, really easy. They are playing Cleveland, the Jets, the Bengals, and the Steelers. So, I mean, before the Steelers, excuse me. They've got the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals. So even if they lose this game, they'll be 6-6, and they'll be fine. Yeah, I actually like Minnesota in this one. Minnesota will have 2 division games coming up after this with Chicago and Green Bay. Giants and the Bears. So somebody please, and I'll get the explanation tomorrow. I bet you if you tune into the show tomorrow at 3:00, they're going to say the same thing I'm going to say. I'd be surprised if they don't. I'm sure Tommy's going to say this and see what the handicappers say. Why are the Bears only a 3.5-point favorite against the Giants? This is shocking. Why? They're 9-3-2 against the spread as a home favorite. 1-0 in that roll this year. So this is actually a good spot too for the Bears. So let me get this straight. Is that because the Bengals lost to a winless team and the Bears barely beat the Bengals who lost to a winless team? Is that what we're getting to as far as 3.5? I don't get it. I'm sorry. I just don't. I have no idea why this is 3.5. Houston is a 1-point favorite. They got Tennessee next. And that's a road game. Remember, this was a big 3-game homestand. Unfortunately, Stroud got hurt. And we're going to see Mills again. But look, Houston's got a really good defense, and that keeps them in games. Plus, they're at home. The Jags, though, have been in a good situation at Houston lately. They have won 2 out of 3 at Houston and covered all 3. They're also coming off a big win against the Raiders off the bye. And don't forget, of course, they beat Houston already earlier this season. Yeah, I couldn't take Houston in this spot. I think it's either take Jacksonville or stay away. The Browns are a road favorite. And this is not a good role for them. In their last 16 as a road favorite, the Browns are 3-12-1. They have not been in this spot this year. They've only been the favorite once this year. That was their win against the Dolphins at home. Look, nobody knows how the Jets are going to respond after the big trades. Nobody. But I do not expect that they're going to, you traded Sauce and Quinnen and their leaders, and what have you done to this team? That's not that is not what Aaron Glenn is building in New York. And if anything, it's going to energize the players to go out and to fill those roles and to play better. So now look, they might lose because there's no Quinton Williams and Sauce Gardner, but they're not going to lose for effort. That's for sure. I mean, honestly, I don't know how you touch this game either way. I mean, I can't take the Browns as a road favorite. That's for sure. Seattle is at 6. Now they are playing tremendous football, and they'll win this game. I have little doubt that they'll win this game, but that is a big number for a team that is really good in this role, including this year. And we talked about that last week. They are an excellent road dog as well. They've covered 9 out of 10, all 3 this year as a road dog, including the win last week against the Cowboys. But Jacoby Brissett, okay, he's been playing better. He got his win. But the reason why Jacoby Brissett is not a starter in this league is because at some point he's Jacoby Brissett. And the longer it goes, at some point he'll get exposed. And I think he'll get exposed this week. Seattle's got a tremendous defense. And I think that they'll, especially coming off the win. The only thing is it is the points. That does bother me because Arizona's got all that. Again, they got the really good numbers this year of close games and the road dog numbers. So that's what I'm worried about. But Seattle definitely needs this game. They're 1-1 in the division. They cannot afford a loss to Arizona. So I'm taking Seattle, and I'm giving the points, but it's not one where I'm going to like this one. I'm a lot more interested in Detroit. And that line is now moved up another point to 9.5. And we said this a few weeks ago, and we're going to say it again because it won a few weeks ago, and hopefully it'll win it again. The Detroit Lions have covered all 12 of their games under head coach Dan Campbell coming off a loss. So anytime he's lost as the head coach ever in his career, the very next game they cover. Not win, but cover. But hey, they're a favorite here, so that they will win and cover. They're also 12-3 as a road favorite under Dan Campbell. 1-0 this year. Washington, meanwhile, 0-4 straight up and against the spread in their last 4, including by a 135-43 margin in the last 3. And there's no Jaden Daniels. Oh, and this is the other team that's going to Spain to take on the Dolphins. So Lions coming off a loss, playing a team that's completely lost, and I have no problem jumping all over Detroit here. Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. These two teams played week 5. The Rams, very strange to see them as that line went all the way up to 8 points, I think, 8.5 almost. And they lost the game 26-23. So it's still the only division game for the Rams all season. So they're 0-1. And the Niners are 3-0 in the division. So bottom line is this. If the Rams lose this football game, they're in trouble regarding the NFC West. I don't see them losing this football game. It's only 3, so I'm not going to be worried too much about that, especially since the Rams have covered 10 of 11 as a road favorite since 2022. And they are 3-0 in that role this year. 10-1 in their last 11. And you know what? I was looking at it in San Francisco, even though they've had a very easy schedule, they've had a lot of traveling lately. They've had 4 of their last 5 games on the road. So that can take a toll. A lot of traveling for San Francisco. And then the primetime games to wrap everything up here for the show. Chargers on Sunday night, 3-point favorite against Pittsburgh. Chargers lost to Pittsburgh last year in Pittsburgh early in the season. So they'll look to get some revenge there. Meanwhile, the Chargers I don't know what to make of the Chargers, really in these spots, or even Pittsburgh. I mean, this is a game that I have to either, I'm going to be very attentive to what the guys say tomorrow, because I don't have a feeling in this game at all. I don't know what to expect from either of these teams from week to week. I do think the Chargers are a better team, but now Joe Alt's out. I just look, they still haven't gotten Hampton back. Looks like he's going to be out another few weeks, even though Vidal has done a decent job as the backup, as the interim number one running back. Yeah, I just I don't know what to make of this game. So it should be a fun game, though. Probably be a high-scoring game, I would think. And then the Monday night game, the Eagles and the Packers. I was a little bit surprised to see the Packers a 2-point favorite here. Keeping in mind that you got the defending Super Bowl champs. Also, you have the Eagles that beat the Packers twice last year. They beat them in the playoffs last year, and they're a 2-point dog. I don't know about that. Now, I don't know. I got to keep an eye on A.J. Brown because they are coming off the bye. So keep an eye on that, because definitely if there's no A.J. Brown, if something happens where you lose a big player like that, that's different. But as long as he's back, I'm going to go with the Eagles in this one. Now, the only thing that I'd be worried about, there's a big number that works against the Eagles here. They are 0-11 against the spread as dogs of 9 or less when they take on an opponent coming off an upset loss. 0-9. Okay, so that definitely, it's the first dog roll of the season for the Eagles too. I like taking teams like that are going into their first dog roll, because normally that means they're a really good team and you're disrespecting them a little bit by putting them in that situation. So I think the Eagles are being disrespected as the 2-point road dog there. So our top NFL plays this week will be Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Chicago, Detroit, and the Rams. Those would be our top plays. And our top upset play would be Minnesota, because even though it's only 3, they're getting 170 on the money line, which is pretty nice for a 3-point spread. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. What did we do? Wow, 3 hours. So again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that before. If you have any questions or comments, just leave it in the section there on the page, and we'll definitely get back to you. But don't forget, we've got more of this coming tomorrow, 3 o'clock with Jim Feist in Las Vegas. And then we'll all be together at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and then back again with just Jim, Mark, and I on Friday at 3 o'clock. That's our football coverage. Keep in mind, our horse racing will not be on Thursday this week. We'll be on Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern, pretty much following our 3 o'clock show on Friday, our football show. So horse racing will be on Friday. No more NASCAR. F1, we did a little bit of talk earlier today. So we have a few more F1 races to preview the rest of the season, but no more NASCAR. And pretty much that means it's horse racing and football the rest of the way. And best of luck this weekend. Best of luck during the week. You got Tuesday, Wednesday games, Thursday games, and all that. And we hope to see you down the road here on some of our other shows the rest of the week. Hopefully you can join us here and let us know what's on your mind. And hopefully I'll see you again here next week. Don't forget, we're trying this out for a couple of weeks. And as long as the numbers stay the same, then I'm going to keep this schedule. But if we wind up feeling like we're getting more traffic by doing the Wednesday show, then I might revert back to that. But we're going to give this a try as I did today. We'll see what kind of traffic we get. Either way, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.